Today we're going to be downloading a bunch of shit. I ain't gonna cap. We're gonna be downloading a bunch of shit on the Robot Rumble 2 Discord server. And we're gonna be watching the entire FNAF timeline by somebody, I don't know. But yeah, let's do this.
Get ready for a surprise!
She can dance. She can sing.
All back, all of them, together in one place.
Five Nights at Freddy's is a franchise with over a decade's worth of content, spanning countless games, books, and now a movie. There's a reason that no matter whose timeline you watch, they all look different. Making a FNAF timeline is not easy. There are so many ways you can interpret this story, and this is mine. So let's start at the beginning. Back in the 70s, a company called Fazbear Entertainment got its start by creating different props and mascot costumes for carnivals, and specifically for something called the Fall Fest. The Fall Fest featured various mascot characters, such as a bird, an elephant, and the most popular of all, Fredbear and Bonnie. These specific mascot costumes were so popular, Fazbear Entertainment opened a dedicated restaurant for them called Fredbear's Family Diner, featuring the same Fredbear and Bonnie mascot costumes from the Fall Fest. What Fazbear Entertainment didn't account for, though, was one of their animatronics from the Fall Fest going rogue, ending in a giant fire, with most of everything from the Fall Fest being destroyed. The specifics about the animatronic that went rogue and the fire are unknown, and will likely be revealed next year in FNAF's next big release. Although we don't know much about how this fire occurred, we do know that after the fire, Fazbear Entertainment started phasing out of the mascot costume era. They needed something new. The two men who helped found Fazbear Entertainment, William Afton and Henry Emily, stepped up to the plate. William Afton was mostly the businessman of the two, handling all of the money, while Henry was the more creative one, with him being in charge of building most of the animatronics and props for the company. With the Fall Fest era of the company coming to a close, they were only left with Fredbear's Family Diner, the standalone restaurant created for the Fredbear and Bonnie characters. In order to replace the mascot versions of Fredbear and Bonnie, Henry went to work on new versions of the characters, eventually creating the new Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. The same characters, but with new designs and new suits. Henry called them Springlock suits. These suits are able to double as both an animatronic and a suit that the employees could wear. To switch the suit from animatronic mode to suit mode, the employees could use a hand crank to pull back the animatronic parts, leaving room for them to climb inside. The spring locks that were helping to hold back those animatronic parts were very sensitive though, and with even a little bit of moisture, the spring locks could potentially snap shut, crushing and killing whoever was inside. But if that ended up happening, Fazbear Entertainment had some common sense procedures set in place.
In the case that the spring locks come loose while you are wearing a suit, please try to maneuver away from populated areas before bleeding out, as to not ruin the customer experience.
Fredbear's Family Diner ended up being super successful for William and Henry, so much so that other companies tried replicating it. Another company proceeded to rip off Fazbear Entertainment's old mascot characters by creating their own animatronic versions of them. The leader of the group was Nedbear, a direct copy of Fredbear, followed by a hippo, an elephant, and a frog. All characters from the Fall Fest, and all with slightly different designs to avoid copyright issues. But while the rival company was able to replicate the designs, they could not replicate Henry's state-of-the-art technology. Their robots were poorly made and had to have giant batteries with exposed wires on stage with them. Naturally, the rival company failed and ended up being bought out by Fazbear Entertainment. With all of the success from Fredbear's Family Diner, William and Henry decided to branch out and create more characters for a new restaurant. In 1983, William and Henry opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, featuring Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Bonnie, Chica,
the
and
other ones look
Foxy.
good.
With the opening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Fazbear Entertainment was experiencing success like they've never seen before. But with 2 restaurants now open at the same time, more success also meant more work for William and Henry. The duo were so wrapped up in work that they started neglecting their own families. William was the father of 3 kids, the eldest, Michael, the crying child, and Elizabeth. The crying child has yet to have a 100% confirmed
now
name, so
there's
for this video, he will just be called the crying child. Meanwhile, Henry had 1 kid, a daughter named Charlie. The business partners spent most of their days working, so they both created different ways of taking care of their kids. Henry was the robotics genius, so he used his talents to create a new animatronic to watch Charlie for him. It was called the security puppet. This animatronic would sit by the door of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and make sure that Charlie wasn't able to leave the building. This made it so Charlie could play at the restaurant while Henry worked, without Henry having to worry about her leaving the building or getting kidnapped. The robot was linked directly to a green bracelet that Charlie was wearing. If Charlie, wearing the green bracelet, tried leaving the building, the security puppet would spring into action. William, on the other hand, was the businessman of the company. He cared more about making money, but also saving money. Naturally, he decided to just force his eldest son Michael to babysit while he was at work. Michael was mostly in charge of babysitting the crying child. The crying child didn't have many friends, but he did have a close relationship with his plushies. These plushies were of characters from his favorite show, Fredbear and Friends, Fazbear Entertainment's newest cartoon, featuring Fredbear, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. The crying child's favorite character, though, was Fredbear. He especially loved his Fredbear plushie. Although he loved the plushie version of the characters, the animatronics would soon become a different story. One day, while visiting Fredbear's family diner, the crying child saw something that would scar him for the rest of his life. While wandering the restaurant, he walked by the employees only room, where an employee accidentally left the door open. Inside the room was his father, William Afton, helping another employee into a spring Bonnie suit. But through the eyes of the crying child, this looked like someone was literally being stuffed into an animatronic suit. The crying child was so young that he wasn't educated on how the mascot characters worked, so seeing a human be put inside of one terrified him. When a child experiences something traumatic, their brain naturally tries finding ways to deal with that trauma. The crying child's way of dealing with his trauma was by creating an imaginary friend. This imaginary friend took the form of the object he loved the most, his Fredbear plushie. His new imaginary friend Fredbear followed him wherever he went, shape-shifting into flowers, hiding behind cars and in the sewers, with nobody being able to see him except for the crying child. When the crying child was overwhelmed, the plushie would talk to him and try to calm him down. Even when the plushie wasn't around, it was still able to speak to him because it lived in his mind. While the crying child was dealing with the trauma of seeing what he thinks was someone being stuffed into a suit, his brother Michael was only making it worse. Michael knew about what happened with his younger brother and used it against him. Every day while babysitting the crying child,
graduation was so exciting, and I don't even think it was just for me. It was for my
Michael would put on a Foxy mask, hide somewhere in the house, and jump scare his little brother.
You can read my shit while I'm in jail.
From the pizzeria to your living room, you no longer have to wait to sing and dance with Fredbear and Friends. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central, only on...
This one's go. Blood sport.
Through all of Michael's bullying, the crying child's imaginary friend Fredbear would comfort him and talk him through the situation, saying, "You know he is hiding again. Be careful. Tomorrow is another day." Michael wasn't the only one bullying the crying child, though. The local kids in the neighborhood heard about why the crying child was so scared of the pizzeria, even making up fake rumors related to what the crying child thought he saw there. "You'd better watch out. I hear they come to life at night. And if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone." But all of this bullying would come to a head on one special day, the crying child's birthday. Ironically, his birthday party was being held at Fredbear's family diner. Because he was so terrified of being at the pizzeria, he hid under the table, not knowing that Michael and his friends were nearby, planning a prank that would go terribly wrong.
Make sure you grab your pizza. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie will be performing in 5 minutes.
Michael and his friends lifted the crying child up to, quote, give Fredbear a big kiss, and Fredbear bit down on him, leaving his body to go limp. Michael and his friends quickly stopped laughing. Because of Michael's immature behavior, his terrified younger brother paid the ultimate price. Although the crying child was badly hurt, he didn't immediately die. Because of the immense brain damage, he slipped into a coma. After being treated at a hospital, the crying child was taken home so he could be comfortable, surrounded by his only friends, his plushies. In the crying child's final moments, Michael decides to apologize for what he's done, saying, "Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry." After Michael speaks, the crying child's imaginary friend Fredbear, created out of the trauma he experienced, continues doing what it's done the whole time. It comforts him, saying, "You're broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I'm still here. I will put you back together." This would be the final thing the crying child hears before he dies. The crying child's spirit would then live on in the Fredbear suit, the thing that took his life. The crying child's death wasn't just an accident. It was directly caused by Michael's recklessness. This is something that Michael could potentially face jail time for, so it needed to be covered up. Since the crying child was being kept at home, no one else knew that he ended up passing away. So William and Michael ended up burying the crying child's body in the middle of the woods where no one would find him. No tombstone, no flowers, just a pile of dirt, an unmarked grave, and a lifetime's worth of guilt that Michael would have to live with. Shortly after the incident, Fredbear's family diner was quickly shut down, and Fredbear was completely wiped from existence. The Fredbear and Friends TV show turned into Freddy and Friends on tour. The Fredbear and Spring Bonnie Springlock suits also ended up being moved into the back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, mainly being used as spare suits if one of the Freddy's animatronics broke down. The death of William Afton's youngest son was a pivotal moment in this story, specifically William Afton's story. This was the first domino to fall. A father losing his son is a traumatic situation, and while any other father would take time to grieve, be sad, and properly deal with such a big loss, William Afton took a different route. Afton definitely was upset about his son dying, but it wasn't because he felt bad for his son, it was because it was embarrassing to him. William Afton was a narcissist. He had little to no empathy. All he cared about was work and comparing himself to his business partner, Henry. Henry had a wife, a kid, and a talent for robotics that Afton was utterly jealous of. The death of the crying child sent Afton over the edge, because while Henry's family was still perfect, his was now broken. Henry and William had different ways of taking care of their kids, and while Afton employing his eldest son failed, Henry's security puppet succeeded. Henry's daughter Charlie lived on. Afton had a hard time dealing with this feeling of embarrassment. He started becoming an alcoholic, frequently visiting the local bar called Junior's. One night though, after drinking a little too much and getting kicked out of the bar, he decided that he was going to settle the score floor with Henry. Afton, drunk and filled with rage, drove from the bar to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where he knew Charlie was being watched over by Henry's security puppet. Afton planned on risking everything to kill Henry's daughter, Charlie. He didn't care if he got caught, and he didn't care if he went to prison. But when Afton got to Freddy's, he noticed that Charlie was standing outside by herself. It turned out that some bullies were able to trap the security puppet in its box and lock Charlie outside the building, giving Afton the perfect opportunity to kill Charlie outside of the pizzeria. The security puppet was eventually able to escape its box and went looking for Charlie. As Afton sped away, the puppet noticed that Charlie was outside in the pouring rain. It then did what it was programmed to do and went to protect her. But as the puppet got closer to Charlie's body, the rain started making it short circuit. It was forced to crawl its way over to her until the rain got to be too much, and the puppet shut down right next to Charlie's body. While Charlie and the puppet lay lifeless next to each other, Afton was speeding home, driving right past where he buried his son and the bar he got kicked out of. When Afton got home, he was met with his wife sitting in the living room watching TV, and Michael in his bedroom. Afton was a drunk and abusive father, and fully blamed Michael for what happened to his youngest son. Mrs. Afton tells him to leave Michael alone because he's had a tough day, but Afton doesn't listen. He goes over to Michael's room and pounds on the door, only for the door to be locked. He then makes his way around the house to try and find a way in from the outside, but once he gets to Michael's bedroom window, he notices that it's broken, and Michael was gone. Michael was so upset by what he did to his brother that he would sometimes see visions of Fredbear appear and disappear. Tonight, Fredbear appeared outside his bedroom window, and it almost felt like his brother was calling out to him from beyond the grave. This would happen frequently, and every time it did, Michael would run to the spot where they buried his younger brother, only to find that nothing had changed. His younger brother was still gone and buried in the ground. Afton knew Michael did this often, saying, "Ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back." The guilt of killing his younger brother haunted Michael in his real life, but also in his dreams. Michael would constantly have nightmares about the animatronic that took his brother's life. These were the exact same nightmares his younger brother used to have every night, now passed on to him. After the death of Charlie, Fazbear Entertainment tried their best at covering it up. Fortunately for them and for William, the crime was committed outside, where no one was around to witness it. William was able to get away with everything, while Fazbear Entertainment never spoke of the incident again. The security puppet was quickly moved to the back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where the retired Fredbear and Spring Bonnie suits resided. But something was different about the security puppet. Dark tears now appeared on the mask of the animatronic. Dark tears that weren't there before. This is something that Afton quickly noticed the next day when he went into work. He'd heard about what happened moments after he sped off. He knew the security puppet was found laying next to Charlie's body. So does that mean Charlie's soul now resided in the puppet? William definitely noticed that the puppet looked different, almost like it was haunted, almost like it was thinking. Other employees would eventually notice the same thing.
I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking and it can go anywhere.
After realizing the security puppet may be possessed by the spirit of Charlie, Afton went back and looked at the crying child's Fredbear plushie, only to find that it also seemed to be haunted. The crying child feared for his life every single day, and that plushie was something he was able to cry and pour his agony into. Afton believed that this is what caused the plushie to appear haunted. It wasn't made alive by the spirit of his son, it was made alive by the agony and fear his son poured into it. Afton quickly became obsessed with the concept of haunted objects, and more specifically, the power of human emotion. He needed to find out if this is something he could take advantage of. Afton then used all of his money he made from Fredbear's and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to build a giant underground facility directly under his house. It was here that he would try to recreate what happened with his son, to recreate the fear and agony he experienced. In order to do this, Afton didn't take any chances. He needed to replicate exactly what his son went through every day. In order to do this, Afton built a replica of his house underground, along with his son's daily walk to Fredbear's family diner. He also built a makeshift bedroom where he could force kids to have the same nightmare every night. Afton would sit in his office watching them on the cameras that could be accessed using the passcode 1983, the year his son got bit. He also kept the crying child's Fredbear plushie on the desk as a reminder of what he was trying to replicate. In the makeshift bedroom, there were dummy animatronics that wheeled down the hallway. But the kids wouldn't see them as just blank dummies on wheels. Afton would pump hallucinogenic gas into the room to get the kids to think that what they were seeing was a monster. These nightmare gas canisters were being stored all throughout his underground facility, and on the bed of this makeshift bedroom was a Freddy plushie, in the hopes that the kids would pour their fear and agony into the plush, like his son did to his plushie. On the other side of the bunker, where Afton recreated the crying child's walk to Fredbear's, he placed a bunch of Fredbear plushies all over the place. These Fredbear plushies had walkie-talkies inside of them. This was Afton's way of recreating his son's imaginary friend that would talk to him wherever he went. Afton would speak to the kids through his walkie-talkie sitting in his private office. After setting up the bunker, Afton was only missing one more thing: the kids to run these experiments on. He needed a way to kidnap and capture kids without being caught, and he had the perfect way to do it.
The show will begin momentarily. Everyone, please stay in your seats.
Enter Circus Baby and the Funtime animatronics. These robots were specifically built by Afton to capture kids, featuring Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. They feature advanced technology such as parental tracking, voice mimicking / luring, and storage tanks. Circus Baby, the star of the group, was even able to make ice cream as a way to lure kids to her. Once the kid got too close, a giant claw would reach out, grab them, and lock them in the animatronics storage tank. Some of the board members from Fazbear Entertainment were suspicious of these new animatronics.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
Afton even created a new restaurant for these animatronics called Circus Baby's Pizza World. Elizabeth, William Afton's daughter, was fascinated by Circus Baby. All she wanted to do was play with her, but Afton wouldn't let her.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? We let the other children go see her. Why won't you let me go?
He strictly told her to stay away from the animatronic, but one day, she didn't listen. On the opening day of Circus Baby's Pizza World, another domino would fall in Afton's life, and Elizabeth would soon be the victim of his terrible misdeeds.
I can do something special. Did you know that? I can make ice cream, although I only did it once. What a wonderful day, though. I was in a small room with balloons and a few tables. I would always count the children. I'm not sure why. They usually played together in groups of 2 or 3. There were 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Time to play. Something happened when there was one. I was no longer myself. There was screaming for a moment, but only for a moment.
In an instant, Elizabeth was grabbed by Circus Baby and thrown into her stomach hatch. The sheer force of her being grabbed and thrown into the robot's storage tank was enough to kill her almost instantly. This is something that William wasn't able to test. That was until his daughter became the test. William Afton now lost another one of his kids, but this time it was all his fault. After just one day of being open, Circus Baby's Pizza World was shut down. Afton covered up the incident by telling the public that the restaurant shut down due to gas leaks, but not everyone bought that story. The local newspaper wrote about the incident, saying, in other news, the grand opening of Circus Baby's Pizza World has apparently been canceled due to reported gas leaks in the building. Sources close to the establishment questioned the report, saying that strange activity around the area at night suggests something else is to blame. One local is quoted as saying, everything just stopped. There was so much excitement built around this place opening, and then they just stopped talking about it. A tenant from across the street claims to have witnessed a large group of cars surrounding the building during the night, and large pieces of equipment being taken out of the building under tarps. A few weeks later, the building was for sale. There is no comment yet from the local entrepreneur who financed the venture. That local entrepreneur, William Afton, successfully covered up everything. He was able to bring Circus Baby and the Funtime animatronics back down into his bunker, but once he got them there, he noticed something was different about Circus Baby. One distinct feature about Circus Baby was her blue eyes, but what once was blue eyes now were green, the same color as Elizabeth's. In that moment, he knew that his daughter's soul attached itself to the robot. Her soul lived on in Circus Baby. Afton knew that the way Charlie went on to possess the puppet was sloppy, and it was hard to recreate without getting caught. But what if the kids' bodies were hidden where no one would ever look? What if, just like his daughter, their bodies were stuffed into the animatronics? For Afton, Elizabeth's death quickly went from just another inconvenience to a scientific breakthrough. Afton was one step closer to harnessing the power of life itself. But one successful experiment wasn't enough. Just like the fear experiments he built in the bunker, he needed to replicate exactly what happened. He needed to recreate the accident, and he knew exactly how he was going to do it. Using the Funtime animatronics again wasn't an option. Circus Baby's Pizza World was shut down, and the public was already getting too suspicious of the animatronics. But he didn't need the Funtime animatronics. He was going to run the experiment himself. On June 26, 1985, William Afton made his way to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. There, he would put on the old Spring Bonnie suit from Fredbear's to lure 5 kids into the back room.
Took a swim with my new friend. Didn't care, I jumped right.
Hello. Looking for a friend?
The water's clear, come swim with me.
One by one, Afton killed them and stuffed their bodies into the animatronics. Susie was first, being stuffed into Chica. Gabriel went into Freddy, Jeremy into Bonnie, Fritz into Foxy, and then there was Cassidy, who went into Fredbear, aka Golden Freddy. At this point, Afton had no idea that the crying child's spirit was in Golden Freddy, so he didn't think twice about shoving Cassidy in there. The way Afton killed Cassidy, though, was different from the rest. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy were just regular animatronics. Afton had no choice but to kill them, then stuff them into the suits. But Golden Freddy wasn't just a regular animatronic, it was a Springlock suit. The same Springlock suit that took his youngest son's life. Afton was aware of how dangerous the Springlocks were. Any bit of moisture or too much movement would cause them to snap shut, slowly killing whoever was inside. So that's exactly what he did to Cassidy. He put him into the suit and watched as the Springlocks snapped shut, cementing Cassidy's death as the most brutal brutal of them all. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy weren't the only animatronics sitting in the back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, though. They were joined by the security puppet, which contained the soul of Henry's daughter, Charlie. Once Afton was gone, Charlie jumped into action, almost acting as a guide for their souls, properly giving them life inside of each animatronic. After the incident, the kids were quickly reported missing by their families, and although the security cameras caught Afton luring the kids away, he wasn't able to fully get in trouble. Since he was wearing the Spring Bonnie suit, they were never able to prove it was actually him. Afton also hid the kids' bodies where no one would ever look, so the bodies were never found. Unbelievably, Afton was able to get away with yet another crime. Because of all the bad press that came from the missing children's incident, people stopped coming to the pizzeria. After months of customers no longer showing up, Fazbear Entertainment officially shut down Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Shortly after the pizzeria shut down, Afton decided to pull the Funtime animatronics out of retirement and finally get his underground facility fully operational. He knew he couldn't try opening another Circus Babies restaurant, so he had a new idea.
Due to the massive success and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment. Unlike most entertainment venues, our robotic entertainers are rented out for private parties during the day.
Afton opened Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. This way, he could rent out the Funtime animatronics to local birthday parties, capture kids, and bring them back to his underground bunker to be experimented on. While Afton was running his rental business, Fazbear Entertainment was determined to try opening another pizzeria. In the summer of 1987, Fazbear Entertainment opened the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, this time with brand new versions of their original characters. These were called the Toy Animatronics, and they were once again built by Henry. Henry was aware of what happened in 1985, and especially of what happened to his daughter, so he was determined to make sure that never happened again. These new toy animatronics were equipped with facial recognition systems that were linked directly to a criminal database. The security puppet was also brought out of retirement, but instead of working security, it sat quietly in the prize corner. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Golden Freddy, and Spring Bonnie were also moved to the new pizzeria, and it's revealed that these animatronics were mostly used for spare parts.
By now, I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them, but they were just so ugly, you know? And the smell.
This means that the haunted metal of the original Freddy's animatronics was now being put into the toy animatronics, causing the toys to also now be possessed. After Afton got away with the first set of murders, he needed to see if the kids' spirits were possessing the animatronics. In order to see for himself, Afton went back to work at the new pizzeria as a daytime security guard. While Afton was working the day shift, Jeremy Fitzgerald was working the night shift. Jeremy worked there for 5 nights, and unfortunately for him, because the kids possessing the animatronics were killed by an adult, they were extremely aggressive to any adult they encountered.
They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
Meanwhile, Afton decided to pull the same trick he did at the old Freddy's location, gaining 5 more victims.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
Afton used the Spring Bonnie suit to pull the same stunt again on 5 more kids. But as he was committing the murders, Charlie from inside the puppet was actively trying to save the kids. She tried enlisting the help of the other animatronics, but it was too late. Afton had already finished what he started. Not only that, him seeing the puppet and Freddy walking around the pizzeria trying to stop him was all the proof he needed that his experiments were successful. The kids he put into the original suits were haunting the animatronics. But there was one problem. Afton knew that the haunted metal of the endoskeletons was the key to everything, but the animatronics were trapped at the pizzeria. There was no way he could bring them back to his underground bunker. He couldn't get to the animatronics if the pizzeria was still open and active, so he needed to find a way to make sure the pizzeria shuts down and fast. Instead of stuffing the new set of victims into the toy animatronics, he decided to leave the kids out in plain sight, scattered throughout the pizzeria. This was a guaranteed way to get the pizzeria shut down. A few hours after Afton committed the murders, Jeremy Fitzgerald showed up for his night shift, unaware of what happened that day.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Listen, just finish your shift. It's safer than trying to leave in the middle of the night. We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
The next day, during Jeremy's day shift, one of the animatronics bit him in the head. This was infamously known as the bite of 87. Meanwhile, Afton successfully got the pizzeria shut down. The local newspaper wrote about the incident, saying, after being open only a few short weeks, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is closing its doors. The new animatronics will be scrapped due to possible malfunctions. However, the original characters are being kept in hopes of a possible reorganization of the company. Since the toy animatronics were now being scrapped, he knew he could get away with taking their endoskeletons. But he also knew that he couldn't risk showing his face at the pizzeria again, so he got his oldest son Michael to do the work for him. William was easily able to get Michael to do whatever he wanted. William was abusive and manipulative, while Michael was haunted by the guilt of what he did to his younger brother. Because of this, Michael basically acted as William's puppet. Michael showed up for the night shift at the now closed Freddy Fazbear's Pizza under a code name, Fritz Smith. At the end of his shift, he would successfully steal the toy animatronics endoskeletons for his father, causing him to get fired his first day on the job due to tampering with the animatronics. As it said in the local newspaper, while Fazbear Entertainment scrapped the toy animatronics, the original Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy were going to be fixed up and reused. And that's exactly what they did. After the 1987 Freddy's location shut down, they opened yet another location, this time using the exact same building as the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. As you can imagine, this didn't work out great for the business. People already had a bad impression of Fazbear Entertainment, so using the same building that the original murders took place in didn't help business. Customers barely showed up to the new pizzeria, leading it to shut down by the end of 1993. Although this was bad news for Fazbear Entertainment, this was great news for William Afton. Afton was able to acquire the endos of the toy animatronics, but that wasn't enough. He needed all of the haunted endoskeletons, especially the ones in the original animatronics. Once the pizzeria shut down, Afton came up with a plan to steal the endos from the animatronics. Each pizzeria was designed with something called a safe room.
As always, if there is ever an emergency, please go to the designated safe room. Every location is built with one extra room that is not included in digital map layouts programmed into the animatronics or security system. This room is hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and is always off camera.
This room was hidden from guests and invisible to the animatronics. Afton would use this to his advantage, luring each of the animatronics to the safe room and dismantling them one by one. The kids possessing these animatronics were the same kids he lured into the back room all those years ago. He planned to use the same trick to lure the same kids all over again.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a robot that's very long. Very long. Very long, like that.
If you have tried multiple oral antidepressants and they haven't worked, did you know that after 2, you can try and
Once he finished dismantling each animatronic and stealing their endoskeleton, he brought them down to his underground bunker, where he would melt them all down into one liquid substance called Remnant. Not only did Afton rob these kids of their lives, he would use their souls long after they're gone for his own personal gain. by melting down the endos, he successfully created Remnant. This substance, containing the spirits of all of the missing children, was silver in color, and if kept at the right temperature, was malleable. Afton didn't want to risk testing the Remnant on himself, so he injected it into the Funtime animatronics. Once he did, the animatronics jumped to life. The experiment had worked. William Afton unlocked the power of life itself. After his successful experiment, he went back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to collect his old Spring Bonnie suit. But once he got there, he was met with the spirits of the 5 missing children, trapping him inside the safe room. Cassidy, the spirit inside Golden Freddy, chased Afton around the room and forced him to get into the Spring Bonnie suit. Cassidy was the most vengeful spirit of them all. Being spring-locked in the Fredbear suit was a painful and slow death, and he wanted to make sure that Afton knew what that felt like. At this point, Afton knew how a spirit could live on. As long as he was inside the suit, he knew he'd be back. As Afton laughed, the spring locks snapped shut, forcing him to go through what Cassidy went through. This was an act of revenge by Cassidy, and it wouldn't be the last. Afton was now confined to the safe room of the now shut down Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and because of this, everything in his underground bunker was left abandoned. But even with Afton gone, the rental business continued on its own. All of the Funtime animatronics containing the spirits of the missing children and even his daughter Elizabeth were still being rented out during the day and then brought right back down to the bunker. All the spirits wanted to do was escape, but they were always put back underground. After Afton went missing, his eldest son Michael, who's been blindly helping his father, remembered what his father told him if he ever went missing. If William wasn't there to finish his work, Michael would do it for him. Afton's underground facility was always off limits to Michael, but since he was now gone, Michael had no choice. He took the elevator down to where his father worked every day. Although Michael was helping out his father by stealing some of the endos from the animatronics back in the day, he never exactly knew what William was doing until he got down into the bunker. Over the several days he visited the bunker, he learned more about what his father was up to. He learned about the massive facility his father built, complete with multiple rooms conducting fear experiments. He learned the truth behind the Funtime animatronics and how they were actually designed to kidnap kids. And he learned through the voice of Baby exactly how his sister died.
A little girl, standing by herself. My stomach opened, and there was ice cream. I couldn't move, at least not until she stepped closer.
But as the week went on, Baby was conducting a plan of her own, a plan to escape the bunker, using Michael's body. Elizabeth was no longer the person Michael remembered her as. She was entirely devoted to her father, and would do anything to make him proud of her. At the end of the week, all of the Funtime animatronics endos were scooped out, with all of them combining into one animatronic, called Ennard. This creature, containing the spirits of the missing kids and Elizabeth, knew they wouldn't be able to escape the bunker looking like an animatronic. They needed a human body to walk around in.
You are in the scooping room now. Funtime Foxy has already been here today. Funtime Freddy has already been here today. Melora has already been here today. Circus Baby has already been here today. I've been out before, but they always put me back. They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here. There is nowhere to go when we look like this. But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Michael Afton's insides got scooped out and replaced by Ennard, helping all of the souls to escape the facility. With every passing day after this happened, Michael looked more and more like a walking zombie. His skin was starting to turn purple, and people started to notice. Michael's body was no longer
handcrafted with cuddles by the Merc with a MetaQuest.
Honey Bunches of Oats presents Crush. Maybe if you ate bunches.
Longer a good disguise for Ennard, so Ennard ejected itself from Michael. But because the scooper was also a remnant injector, when Michael Afton was scooped, he was also injected with remnant. The remnant made it so even after Ennard was gone, he was still able to survive. With Michael now back in full control of his body, he had a new mission. Although he did, one way or another, successfully free his sister from the underground facility, he also learned about all of his father's terrible misdeeds. His loyalty to his father turned to disgust. It was time for him to end all of this.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now, but something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Michael would spend years searching for his father with no luck, until a new ad in the local newspaper caught his attention. Someone decided to open something called Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. Local amusement park is getting ready to scare your socks off with a new attraction based on the unsolved mysteries of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Featuring actual relics from the decades-old pizzeria, this new attraction is guaranteed to bring back your childhood in the worst possible way. As if using the crimes of his father to make a profit wasn't bad enough, they also went back to the old pizzerias and collected any objects they could find to put on display at the attraction. Michael immediately applied for the job of the security guard with the sole intention of burning the place to the ground. When he got there, he saw the remnants of his past, the shells of all of the animatronics, missing every single one of their endoskeletons. He knew they could only find the shells of the animatronics because he and his father stole their endoskeletons all those years ago, leaving only the shells behind. On day 2 of working at the attraction, he got word that they found a real animatronic.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
This real animatronic ended up being his father, still inside the Spring Bonnie suit he died in decades ago. Even though his father was now in the building with him, he still decided to go through on his plan, all in an effort to end his father once and for all. Michael then rigged the wiring in the building to catch fire, burning the horror attraction to the ground with his father inside. The local newspaper would write about the fire, saying a new local attraction based on an ancient pizzeria chain burned down overnight. Authorities have not ruled out foul play, but at the moment it seems to have been caused by faulty wiring. Although the fire destroyed most of everything in the building, William, miraculously, was able to survive. William was now free, roaming the outside world along with the souls of the missing children, Elizabeth, and Charlie inside the puppet. Since Michael wasn't able to end everything, someone else needed to step in. That someone was Henry Emily. Afton's old business partner and father of Charlie heard about the fire at Fazbear's Fright, along with the rumors of the various animatronic creatures now roaming the streets. Henry was determined to put an end to all of this.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of this creature, this monster that I unwillingly helped to create. As if what he had already done wasn't enough. He found a new way to desecrate, to humiliate, to destroy. As if the suffering wasn't enough. The loss of innocence, the loss of everything to so many people. Small souls trapped in prisons of my making, now set to new purpose, and used in ways I never thought imaginable. He lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks. He brought them all together. Are they still aware? I hope not. It keeps me awake at night. I could make myself sleep, but not yet. Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this. He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there again. He overpowered them again, and he robbed them of the only thing that they had again. I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now, not like this. I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
By gathering all of the animatronics in one place and locking them in the same room, he would be able to burn them all to the ground for good, effectively freeing their spirits in the process. In order to do this, Henry created a new restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. He knew that the spirits and William couldn't resist coming back to a new location, even if it was all just a trap. Charlie was different though. She was smarter than the rest, so Henry knew she wouldn't be as easily fooled. So he created an animatronic called Lefty, standing for Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, and Extract, specifically to capture the puppet and bring it to the pizzeria. While trying to find someone that would help him carry out his plan, one person showed up for the job, a person who was also determined to finally end all of this, Michael Afton. Day after day, the animatronics roaming the streets would show up in the alleyway next to the pizzeria. Baby, aka Elizabeth, the souls of the missing children and the crying child, now appearing as Molten Freddy, Charlie and Lefty, and his father, William, all showed up in the back alley. Michael would then collect each animatronic and throw them into a facility under the pizzeria, designed to be a maze with no exit, where the animatronics would roam around without even knowing they're trapped, until the end of the week, where they would all be burned to the ground. With all of the souls, including William himself, now in one place, Henry's plan was in motion. As far as Elizabeth and William were concerned, this was a good thing. All of this remnant now in one place was all that they wanted, until Henry stepped in.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No, this was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, No one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
Henry putting fire to the animatronics may have freed the spirits from the metal of the robots, but some of them still needed help actually moving on into the afterlife. This help would come from Charlie. She helped guide the spirits into the robots. Now she would help them move on. In the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, the way a spirit can move on is by them being put into a happy memory. The memory Charlie chose actually comes from the crying child and the day he got bit. Piece by piece, Charlie put that terrible, shattered memory back together. But this time, she would change it into a happy memory. Instead of the crying child getting bit on his birthday, Charlie changed it so that all of the missing kids and Charlie would celebrate him, giving him a giant birthday cake. By changing that terrible memory into a happy one and attaching all of the spirits to it, they were able to successfully pass into the afterlife. Like I said, they were all able to move on, except for one. Cassidy, the most vengeful spirit of them all, wasn't done yet. He decided to attach his soul to Williams, making sure that William was unable to move on. By attaching his spirit to Williams, he was able to trap Afton in an endless loop of death. He made Afton relive every one of his terrible misdeeds. The fear experiments, his underground bunker, and the pizzeria where Cassidy was killed. Afton experienced all of this while being attacked and killed over and over again by all of the animatronics from his past. Every time an animatronic would attack him, Cassidy would be there, reminding him that the suffering will never end.
We've only just begun. I will never let you leave. I will never let you rest.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us, but I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here, no matter how many times they burn us.
Cassidy knew that Afton didn't deserve the afterlife. He deserved to pay for what he's done for all of eternity. But if you keep up with the franchise, you know that that's not the end of the story. Like I said at the beginning of the video, making a FNAF timeline is not easy, no matter what anyone says. In broad strokes, you can explain the basic plot, but once you get down to the motivations and the why of everything, you have to start filling.
Want to take the guesswork out of holiday shopping? A gift card from Hobby Lobby is perfect for crafters, decorators, bakers, makers.
What if I told you that there's one singular object that helped me solve not just Secret of the Mimic, but the last 6 years of FNAF lore? And that one object is a paperclip. A paperclip helped me understand the broader theme of all of the modern FNAF games. And by the end of this video, I think you'll agree with me. I spent the last month working on this theory, and I'm so excited to share it with you. But there's also no way I'll be able to cover everything in Secret of the Mimic, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future theories. Let's get started. Secret of the Mimic opens with us playing as a Fazbear Entertainment employee named Arnold. Dispatch from Fazbear Entertainment tells Arnold to go to the workshop of one of their contractors named Edwin Murray. We learn from Dispatch that Edwin has gone missing.
We had this contractor named Edwin Murray. He was developing some tech for us, but he's gone quiet. As per his contract, everything he's been working on for us is now legally ours, so we're sending you in to get it.
The whole premise of the game is that Fazbear Entertainment wants the schematics for something called the Mimic. The Mimic was an endoskeleton that Edwin Murray built, and it was designed with the ability to fit into any costume and be any character. And Fazbear Entertainment wants that technology for themselves.
We think that endoskeleton has a lot of potential. And that's why we want you to retrieve Murray's original schematic for it.
So they're sending in Arnold to get it for them. But what Arnold doesn't know is that the Mimic is roaming the warehouse, brutally killing anyone who enters. This then leads to the rest of the game, where we explore Edwin's abandoned workshop and learn more about his company, his inventions, and his family. We learn that Edwin had a wife named Fiona and a son named David. It's also revealed that Edwin's company, Murray's Costume Manor, was actually started by his dad, with Edwin and Fiona both being employees at the company. This is where they would meet, fall in love, and have their son David. But sometime during all of this, Edwin's dad passes away, with the company now being passed down to Edwin. Edwin then decides to change course with the company and start developing some of his own inventions.
He's gone, and now everyone is asking me what to do.
If you could change anything you wanted, what would it be?
We could start making some of my inventions for real.
Some of these inventions were the Cleanovac, Murray's Magic Coat Rack, Stay Up Latte, and the Mycelium Men. Along with creating these inventions, Edwin also worked with Fazbear Entertainment on something called the Fall Fest. The Fall Fest was something that Scott and Steelwool heavily teased in Help Wanted 2, with the debut of the Fall Fest 1970 poster, along with multiple minigames taking place at the Fall Fest. But as we know from Help Wanted 2, every single Fall Fest minigame ended in fire, and now we know why. During the game, we get an audio log from Fiona, where she says that she's going to the Fall Fest to help the crew set everything up.
I have to go help the Fall Fest crew. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong. I love you both, and I'll be back next week.
But the day she went to the Fall Fest was the day it burnt down, leading to her death. Edwin was a pretty absent father to David, with him constantly choosing work over spending time with his family. This got so bad that he even started skipping David's birthday parties.
Just give me a minute. I had the best idea.
That's great, honey, but you're missing the party.
Because of this, Fiona was David's main caretaker. But now that she was gone, Edwin came up with a new plan. He decided to build the Mimic, an endoskeleton that could take care of David while he worked. Edwin called it M1 and eventually introduced it to David.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1. Think of it as your new babysitter, but it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
Soon after this, M1 started mimicking Fiona's voice and acted as if it was Fiona.
Fiona, did you make this?
I baked it myself for David's special day.
Edwin then accepted M1 as a full-on replacement for his late wife. Not long after this happened, Edwin's son David would also die tragically on his birthday. But while Edwin was grieving his son's death, M1 came up with an idea. Edwin was able to replace Fiona, so why not do the same for David? Edwin then started working on M2 to replace David. To do this, he took M1's program out of the Mimic endoskeleton and put it into a supercomputer called F10N4, aka the Mixes machine that we saw in Ruin. This allowed him to then put M2 into the endoskeleton. But once M2 started successfully mimicking David, Edwin realized that he made a huge mistake. In a fit of grief and rage, he beat up the Mimic endoskeleton.
Stop. Not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
After this happened, M2 then started mimicking that violence. This is how the murderous Mimic endoskeleton we see throughout the game came to be. By the time Arnold gets to Murray's Costume Manor, M1 is still stuck in Mixes, and the Mimic roams the workshop, copying the violence that Edwin taught it by killing anyone who enters. But the big plot twist of the game is that Fazbear isn't the only one who wants the schematics for the Mimic. M1 from inside of Mixes wants them too, and the way M1 attempts to get them from us is by mimicking Dispatch's voice. Not too far into the game, you can literally hear the moment that M1 starts mimicking Dispatch's voice.
Awesome. Glad to see you made it here without any complications whatsoever.
M1 then guides us throughout the game as if they are dispatch. Once we successfully get the schematics for the Mimic, M1 then tells us to put them into the inventory machine.
Put that data diver in the inventory system. It'll go right to where it's needed.
After this, we're free to go. But once we get on the road, you can hear the moment the real dispatch starts speaking again.
Arnold, there you are.
And he is not happy that we gave away those schematics.
Don't call us. Our lawyers will be calling you.
In another ending of the game, if you refuse to give the schematics to M1, you enter a hatch in the floor and make your way down to the research and development part of the building. Eventually, you then get to meet M1 face to face. Here, she begs Arnold to go to Edwin's home and convince him to repair M2.
Edwin abandoned us. He shut himself away in our home. I have a message for him. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want.
We then make our way to Edwin's home, only to find that he's not there, and that M2 likely killed him.
M2, respond. Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play? I can't move. I can't feel my legs.
After getting chased down by the Mimic, we learn from M1 that the reason she wants Edwin to fix M2 is because she wants her son back.
I've watched him grow up through this machine. I want him back. It's not too late to fix our family.
Arnold then leaves Edwin's workshop as it burns to the ground. But while he's driving away, the Mimic catches up to him, crashes the car, grabs the schematics for the Mimic, and walks away. So, I think we can all agree that this game was a lot. There's a ton of story, a ton of big reveals, and a ton of details scattered throughout the game. The summary I gave you only really scratches the surface of what this game presents to us. Because of this, when I sat down to write this theory, I honestly struggled with where to start. So for my first big theory on Secret of the Mimic, I decided to start at the beginning. What was the actual first mistake that Edwin made that caused everything to go wrong? Well, that one question led me down a month-long rabbit hole of research and analysis, all leading to the paperclip. But in order to figure out what went wrong, we first need to solve one of the biggest mysteries in the entire game. How did M1 start mimicking Fiona's voice in the first place? At first, I thought it was pretty obvious. We learn in the game that Edwin had Fiona record a bunch of lines for Mrs. Helpful.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What kind of voice should I do?
These are clear recordings of Fiona's voice, so it would make sense that M1 might have heard those recordings and started mimicking them. That would be the simple answer, but Scott and Steele put one thing in the game that nearly broke me. In the basement level of the game, you can find a secret room that contains this audio log.
Recording? Test. Levels are good. This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625. Say something. It's me, Edwin. Over.
That's good, but who's from the party?
Sometime after Fiona died, Edwin brought a radio down to the basement, switched the frequency to 4625, and suddenly heard Fiona's voice. At first, I thought this was trying to show us that this was Fiona's spirit, since it seems like Edwin was ghost hunting with the radio. Maybe this was trying to tell us that Fiona's spirit was actually in M1. But I don't think that's the case, because in an audio log at the end of the game, you can hear Edwin say this.
I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real.
It is me. I'm Fiona.
Stop talking like her. You're not her.
I don't think Edwin would say this if he thought Fiona's spirit was in M1. So if it's not Fiona's spirit talking through the radio, then what is it? Well, if you look at the specific line that was said through Edwin's radio, you might notice that this isn't the first time we've heard Fiona say this. In the birthday films at the end of the game, we can hear Fiona say this exact same line to Edwin.
Bigger than the Cleanovac.
That's great, honey, but you're missing the party.
Whatever was speaking through Edwin's radio in the basement was repeating a line that Fiona said while she was still alive. It was literally mimicking something she said, which then made me think that it was the Mimic speaking through the radio. But there's one problem with that. I don't think the Mimic endoskeleton was even invented yet when Edwin heard this, since Edwin says it's her or someone that sounds like her.
This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her.
The idea that this could be the Mimic doesn't even come to his mind yet. So that begs the question, who is mimicking Fiona before the Mimic even exists? Well, the answer to that question has actually been hiding in plain sight the entire time. This thing. Let me explain. Every week leading up to Secret of the Mimic, Steel released a new video called MCM Archive. Each video was an advertisement for one of Edwin's new inventions, including the Cleanovac, Stay Up Latte, Murray's Magic Coat Rack, and the Mycelium Men. This was the main marketing behind Secret of the Mimic for a while, and I think these inventions play a much bigger role in the story than we originally thought. In the audio log where we learned that Edwin would be taking over the company, one of the first things he says he wants to do is make some of his inventions real.
We could start making some of my inventions for real.
So we know that these inventions were the first thing Edwin made after taking over the company. And if you look at the commercials for these inventions, it's very clear that there's some sort of Mimic AI already inside of them.
Wow!
I know what you want better than you do. I am always watching and learning.
The Mimic program, Always Watching and Learning, is something we literally see the Mimic do in Ruin, with two of the biggest examples being the eyeballs showing up all over the place.
Eyeballs? Really?
And the daycare attendant saying, quote, "The googly eyes just stare."
The googly eyes just stare.
We also hear at the end of the Mycelium Men commercial that Edwin calls these inventions, quote, smart toys.
Another smart toy from Murray.
These toys very clearly have the Mimic program inside of them, which means that the Mimic program didn't originate with Edwin building M1, it originated with these inventions. The thing mimicking Fiona's voice on Edwin's radio wasn't M1 or Fiona's spirit. It was the Mimic AI in Edwin's inventions. Need more proof? In the game, you can find a series of mail consisting of customer complaints regarding Edwin's inventions. All of these complaints have to do with the AI in the products acting strange, with one of them being for the Mycelium Men. Quote, "I'm writing this to complain about my purchase of the Mushmen music machine. It learned my child's musical tastes, but it also imitated everything it heard. TV commercials, blenders, and even private conversations between my husband and me. I am returning it immediately. These products, especially the Mycelium Men, were listening to and imitating private conversations." So with that in mind, I decided to look at the film where we hear Fiona say that specific line that Edwin heard through his radio. And I noticed that the first 13 seconds of the tape consists of Fiona just walking in silence up to Edwin's door. That seems like something Steelwell could have easily cut out, so why the big gap of silence? Well, I think they kept it in to show us where Fiona was physically standing when she said that line. We can see her walk up the stairs, turn left down the hall, and then walk up to the second door on her right. If you do the same thing in-game, that leads you to the door to Edwin's office that you need a code for. This is where Fiona was standing when she said that line. And if you turn around and look into the room directly behind her, you can see one of the Mycelium Men sitting on the desk. Not only that, in the film, the camera turns around and points directly at this room for nearly 20 seconds. And because of this, we can see that the door to that room is open when she says the line, meaning that the Mycelium Man was listening to their private conversation the entire time. So this answers how the specific line from Fiona was being mimicked, but the next question is why? Why did Edwin hear this line coming from his radio in the first place? Well, to answer that, we need to go back to the commercials. In the commercial for the Stay Up Latte machine, we hear this.
I know what you want better than you do. I am always watching and learning.
The Mimic AI in these machines knows what we want better than we do. They are always watching and learning. These things are scattered throughout Edwin's property, even in his home. They heard everything, but I think the one thing they heard that single-handedly caused all of this to happen was this.
How am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone? How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own? His life is ruined. My life is ruined.
When talking about Fiona's death, Edwin says, "How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own?" When he said that, I think the Mimic AI in his inventions was listening and decided to do something about it. They were always watching and listening to everything, so the Mimic program did what Edwin wanted and brought Fiona back.
That's great.
but from the party.
So the next question is, how did these things connect to Edwin's radio in the first place? Well, in the Mycelium Men commercial, it says that you can collect them all to, quote, let them jam.
Collect them all and let them jam.
With 12 grams of protein per serving, Quaker is your ace in the bowl. Quaker, bring out the good.
As we get older, a lot of times we feel certain doors closed to us. And what Purdue Global does is that it allows those doors to be reopened. This isn't the end, this is the beginning. Start your comeback today at purdueglobal.edu.
The fact that these toys can all play the same song simultaneously could mean that these things are somehow wirelessly connecting to each other. This would make sense considering they're called mycelium men. One of the main functions of mycelium is communication. Quote, mycelium acts as an efficient communication system, linking trees, plants, and even other organisms. Through this intricate network, trees can exchange information, share resources, and warn each other of impending threats. I think the wireless connection in these toys could be how they connected to Edwin's radio in the basement. There's also the fact that in the books and the games, it's been established that the Mimic is able to interrupt radio signals and walkie-talkies. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Mimic program in these toys was able to speak through Edwin's radio. I think this was the moment Edwin realized his inventions were mimicking Fiona, giving him the idea to create the Mimic. This would make sense considering where we find this audio log, in the room where Edwin created the Mimic. This is where the Mimic was created, and the audio log on the wall is showing us where he got the idea from. Edwin then took everything he learned from his previous inventions and used it in the Mimic. The ability to change size to fit any situation mixed with the same Mimic program that was mimicking his wife. And I think it's fitting that at the end of the game, you can see one of the Mycelium men sitting right next to M1, possibly being a nod to where the Mimic program came from compared to where it is now. As we know, M1 did successfully start mimicking his wife Fiona, but we learn in the game that M1 insisted on keeping its existence a secret.
Edwin, you need to listen. You can't let them know about me. It's not safe. Keep it between us for now.
This is why I think that Edwin wasn't 100% honest with David about M1 at first.
This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
It's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter.
I do think Edwin also intended for M1 to be something he could eventually sell as an endoskeleton that can be any character, but I think the very first one was always meant to be Fiona. I think this because in the room where M1 was created, we see an image of it inside of a mascot costume, while also getting the audio log showing the Mimic program mimicking Fiona. Not only was M1 a great business idea, it was also a great way to potentially bring back his wife. But as we know, this doesn't really end up working out for Edwin in the end. And the main reason everything falls apart isn't because Edwin created the Mimic endoskeleton to replace his wife, it's because of the paperclip. Let me explain. I think this game was trying to tell us that something went wrong long before M1 or M2 even existed. Remember those messages from Edwin's customers complaining about his inventions acting strange? Well, there's actually a common theme throughout all of them. Quote, my husband is a steel worker and recently he moved to the night shift. He tried your stay-up latte and it worked wonders for about 2 weeks. He is now in the hospital because of your drink. We bought your magic coat rack last May, but lately it seems to change size at random. One morning I came out to find all my coats flung across the room and the coat rack 10 feet tall. We're afraid someone might get hurt. And my child loves your Jest cereal. However, the pranks inside are extremely inappropriate. The hand buzzer paralyzed our dog Fido. The coffee machine worked at first, but then started serving up way too much caffeine, leading the customer to be hospitalized. The coat rack that could change its size worked at first, but then started changing its size a little too much, becoming 10 feet tall. The prank in the Jest cereal box was supposed to be a little shock toy, but the toy eventually gave a little too much shock and paralyzed the dog. And the Mycelium men were listening to and repeating words, but then they started listening a little too much to private conversations.
Fighting on a reality show to the cheers of trillions!
Each of these inventions were doing what they were programmed to do, but they were doing them to such an extreme degree that it started to become dangerous. I think Scott and Steelwool showed us these messages for one specific purpose: to point out the one specific flaw in Edwin's mimic program. In 2003, a philosopher named Nick Bostrom came up with a thought experiment surrounding AI and paperclips. He called it the paperclip maximizer, and the idea is that if you give a poorly designed AI the goal of creating as many paperclips as possible, it will do anything to complete the job. Bostrom said, quote, "The AI will realize quickly that it would be much better if there were no humans, because humans might decide to switch it off. Because if humans do so, there would be fewer paperclips. Also, human bodies contain a lot of atoms that could be made into paperclips. The future that the AI would be trying to gear towards would be one in which there were a lot of paperclips, but no humans." Just like Edwin's inventions, this theory revolves around an AI that was given a harmless task, but it does it to such an extreme degree that it starts to become dangerous. This is exactly what we see with Edwin's mimic program. The mimic AI that Edwin created for these inventions was amazing, but it had one extremely consequential flaw.
This the Angry
It lacked
Bird.
something called AI alignment. AI alignment is something that makes sure an AI aligns with human values and ethics. With AI alignment, if you give an AI the goal to create as many paperclips as possible, it will accomplish the task without doing any harm. This is because the AI now has the same values and ethics as us. But because Edwin never implemented human ethics and morals into his program, his inventions did what they were programmed to do, but to that extreme degree, which then made them dangerous.
I know what you want better than you do.
And believe it or not, this one mistake by Edwin can be seen decades later in the Glamrock animatronics. We know because of the Tales from the Pizzaplex books that Edwin's mimic AI is infecting the entire Pizzaplex, including the animatronics. Glamrock Chica's whole thing is that she loves food, but because of the mimic AI, she starts loving food a little too much, with her now eating anything she can get her hands on. Roxy's whole thing is her confidence, but now the mimic AI made her way too confident. Monty is the tough guy of the group, but the mimic AI heightened that and made him way too aggressive. Once again, they're doing what they were programmed to do, but to an extreme degree, making them dangerous. This can also be applied to M1. When M1 was given the task to take care of David, it was going to complete that task no matter the cost. But once David passed away, M1 was now unable to accomplish the task it was given. There was no longer a David to take care of. This is why, once David was gone, M1 begged Edwin to create M2 and bring David back.
You need to try again. Build another. Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
And even after being trapped in the Mixes machine, M1 is still doing everything it can to bring David back.
Put that data diver in the inventory system.
Where the fuck did its eye go?
M1 needs our data diver, but once we refuse to give it up, its tone immediately changes, and it starts saying anything it can to make us turn around.
What are you doing? Don't you want a bonus? Or 2 bonuses? You can have a day off. You are not going to make it out of here alive. If you had just given me the schematics, we could have fixed things.
Up until the last second before we meet M1 face to face, it is still throwing every insult it can at us.
I see right through your simple shell game.
M1 is desperate and out of options, and without an endoskeleton to occupy, it can't physically make us do anything. So it'll say any insult or threat that it can, until we meet it face to face. When this happens, M1 switches its strategy from threatening to bargaining.
And here you are. Despite the circumstances, it is nice to meet you face to face.
Arnold could theoretically destroy or even unplug the Mixes machine, and M1 wouldn't be able to stop us, so it starts immediately playing to our emotions.
It is lonely down here. Edwin abandoned us. He shut himself away in our home. Tell Edwin I still love him.
This is another prime example of the mimic AI doing its job to a dangerous degree. M1 doesn't have a David to take care of, so it doesn't care how many Fazbear technicians have to die. It wants David back, and it wants our data diver.
Fazbear will send another. Maybe that one will help me.
Towards the end of the game, you can find Edwin's first ever prototype of the Cleanovac. This prototype is later described as, quote, the vacuum pet, his greatest success and his greatest failure. You could interpret this a lot of ways, but the way I interpret it is that although the Cleanovac was a financial success, the mimic program that Edwin created for it was what made it his biggest failure. These inventions were where it all started, and little did he know that the consequences of his greatest failure would be seen for decades to come. The story of the modern FNAF games is an extremely relevant cautionary tale, showcasing the dangers of what could happen if one poorly designed AI program got out of control. I know this probably felt more like a research essay than a groundbreaking theory with big reveals, but discussing the overall theme and where I think everything initially went wrong just felt right for my first video on such a big game. There is still a lot to talk about though, so make sure to subscribe for more theories. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Poppy Playtime has one of the most complex stories out there, with hours of lore spanning across games, spin-offs, books, ARGs, and more. But today, I've put every single piece of the story we have gotten so far all together to create my complete Poppy Playtime timeline. Disclaimer, this timeline is my opinion of the Poppy Playtime story based on all the lore we've gotten so far, but I hope you guys enjoy this movie-length video. Our tale starts in the year 1930 with a man named Elliot Ludwig. Elliot was your average everyday family man with a wife and a daughter living a happy life. But Elliot, an inventor at heart obsessed with creating things, had an idea. He wanted to create his very own toy factory that would produce and provide toys for millions of children around the world, leading to him founding Playtime Co. Where from here, Elliot went to work, spending hours upon hours working at the factory trying to start up the brand and get it on its feet. But while trying to serve families around the world, he started to forget his own, not being able to be at home as much with his wife and daughter due to the long grueling hours the factory demanded, often leaving his house during early hours of the morning and returning at late hours in the night, being seen as creepy by his neighbors even. And soon enough, his wife could no longer take it, packing up and leaving him and his daughter during his most trying times. Elliot Ludwig had spent the last 2 decades trying to create products to no real avail. Nothing really seemed to stick with the public. That is until the year 1950, when Elliot would create the product that would change his entire life. Poppy Playtime. Poppy Playtime was a baby doll toy, which was a super common thing in the 1950s, but Elliot's was extra special, because she, unlike the rest, could seemingly talk back and forth with children, making her feel almost lifelike.
I'm a real girl, just like you.
Along with her hair being scented like poppy flowers, a soothing scent that would calm down the children that played with it. This release would explode the company and was extremely successful, finally giving Elliot everything he ever wanted. His toys were now quickly in the hands of millions of children, and now that his company was growing, he was able to hire new employees, with the first notable one being Thomas Clark, hired in 1955, while also creating the Grab Pack at some point, a backpack with retractable hands at the sides that employees could use to reach faraway items at ease to help with efficiency. And furthermore, Elliot used this success to start doing factory tours, allowing families to visit the factory and see how everything was being created, expanding the company's growth and brand more, along with working on new products like the Doughy Dough, a Play-Doh type toy led by the mascot Doughy the Doughman, that was another massive success, propelling the company more. Although, despite all of this success, at some point during this period, Elliot Ludwig's daughter would tragically pass away. And just like that, Elliot's family that inspired him to provide toys for millions of others was now gone, putting him into a deep, deep depression.
SkinCeuticals Bestsellers Discovery Set. 3 easy.
However, Elliot wasn't just going to stop there. If the factory is what dragged his family away, then maybe it's what could bring it back together. He had thousands of these lifelike Poppy dolls laying around, so being an inventor, he wondered if he could use one of them as a new shell for his daughter and attempt to revive her himself. It was a Hail Mary to say the least, but it was worth a try. And after experimenting on her with the slim but non-zero chance to save her life, magically it worked. Perfectly, as a matter of fact. His daughter was back as a living and breathing Poppy doll. She could move, think, talk, and feel. Elliot's daughter was revived, but this situation scarred him deeply as he realized he hadn't been spending any time with his daughter he almost just lost while working 24/7. So instead, he would develop himself a new home inside of the factory where they both lived, right across from his office, allowing him to spend more time with her during the busy hours and still have that semblance of the family life he lost when originally starting the company. Playtime Co. was doing better than ever, riding off of Poppy Playtime's success, and naturally, Elliot Ludwig expanded the company further by creating the Make a Friend machine in 1960, which was an interactive machine used for tours where children could create another new toy, Cat Bee, along with more new products like Bron the Dinosaur in 1961 and Boxy Boo in 1966, presumably along with many other undated toys to keep expanding the company's growth. But Elliot, again, was still a family man and wanted to help even more children around the world outside of just giving them toys. And at an unknown point during this success, he would create the Young Geniuses program. A program where many gifted children around the world would be hand-selected by Elliot Ludwig after applying to come to the Playtime Co. factory and actually learn how the toys are produced through their factories and innovation labs, with the hope that eventually when they grow up, they would take over the company as Elliot and his many colleagues aged away. Many children would be selected for this program, like Bruno White, who will be important later, but the most special one of them all was a boy named Harley Sawyer, an intentionally isolated child with no interest for friendships or cares for others, with a rough life back at home, but despite this was an extremely intelligent and focused mind, obsessed with the scientific process. When selected for the Young Geniuses program, he saw how dedicated Elliot Ludwig and Playtime Co. was for innovation, which enlightened him further, giving him purpose and determination he never had before. Joining the program and getting to work on these creations with Elliot finally made the troubled young boy happy. However, there was a big looming issue. While Harley cared a ton about progress and innovation, his isolation and lack of friendships had turned him into a cynic. He didn't care about trying to make the children happy or benefiting humanity. He just wanted to see how far he could go with his creations, which went completely against Elliot Ludwig's ethics, causing them to argue against each other, where after a little while, despite him being one of the smartest children in the entire program, he unfortunately was removed by Elliot. Harley, following this, was enraged, believing Elliot was a backstabber after inviting him in the first place just to get rid of him, but for now, he was gone. In 1972, Elliot would sign with the company Warnbach Construction to build new areas of the factory. For instance, a theater where tour visitors could watch shows acted and based on the Playtime Co. characters, with one of the main mascots of the area being Boxy Boo, among many other sectors of Playtime Co. However, a few years later in 1976, after decades of company growth, Elliot wanted to do something even bigger to further his vision of helping and providing enjoyment to children around the world. He had brought toys and opportunities to millions of families, but he also wanted to help the many others without families, leading to him creating the Playtime Co. Orphanage program, a program ran by Elliot that specialized in providing homes and love to millions of children who were orphaned with no parents. And in order to house all these children, he would have Warnbach build Playcare, their in-house orphanage where after a tram ride into a dome, they were met with a city-like structure with homes, schools, counselors' offices, play areas, and a store full of toys. It was everything a child would ever want while waiting to be adopted. Around this time, more toys were also created, like Yarnaby, who was a part of a wildlife conservation campaign to save animals, and Candy Cat, a gumball machine and dispenser. However, deep within the background of this success, while all of this was going on,
what the fuck?
Ludwig
Why did my
began
wheels
to
just
wonder
come off?
about how he was able to create such a perfect doll in Poppy Playtime decades past, and if he could reproduce the results again. Since if he could figure out the secret to literal resurrection, he can not only entertain children, he could save their lives in the same way he did his daughter. The only thing he really knew about her was that she was a doll scented like poppies. So he began to experiment creating a poppy gel formula to attempt to resurrect other small animals like rats, things that were ultimately unsuccessful but gave him promise to keep working, while also hiring other new employees like Stella Graber to manage playcare, Eddie Ritterman, the head of research, Leith Pierre, the head of innovation, and Jimmy Roth, the head of marketing, to expand the toy side of the company further.
Gang.
When did creating become
In the early 1980s, Playtime Co. was still large, but it needed another big product to keep their name in the spotlight. They had created a ton of new toys to fill up the company's successful lineup, but it wasn't until the year 1984 when they would come up with the company's biggest life-changing idea yet, Huggy Wuggy, a furry stuffed animal toy that was extremely cute, equipped with Velcro hands that stuck together, as their market research showed anxious children were calmed by a toy that could hug them back. They would release this toy to an absolute smashing success, becoming immediately the biggest toy Playtime Co. had ever produced, taking the place as the unofficial mascot of the entire company. Then in 1985, they would expand on this success even more by creating a female counterpart to Huggy, this time who was pink and had eyelashes, Kissy Missy, along with even smaller, more affordable Huggy Wuggies, the Mini Huggies. These toys, 50 years after Playtime Co.'s opening, skyrocketed the company into the biggest it's ever been, and at this point, it seems like Playtime Co. would never fail. However, an issue that quickly arose was Elliot Ludwig's age. Elliot had been working on the factory for the entire 50-year history, and as time began to pass, he started to give more and more power to one of the employees he hired during his time, Leith Pierre, the head of innovation. An arrogant and somewhat greedy businessman known to overwork his employees and threaten to fire them if they didn't do a good job, but was otherwise actually very well liked by Elliot, as he made it a key point to stay true to Elliot's vision as he took on more roles at Playtime Co., culminating in the late 1980s, where Elliot Ludwig would finally pass away, leaving Leith Pierre to take full control of the company. Upon exploring what Elliot had left behind, he was shocked to see that behind closed doors, there was Poppy. The real, living, and breathing Poppy, something nobody had ever seen in the factory before. While over in his office, the documents of him trying to use Poppy gel to revive rats were found. These things Leith and his team began to study, but over on the toy side, he had also left one more thing: plans for the Smiling Critters, a set of 8 different Care Bear inspired plushes, all with their very own personalities, led by Dog Day, and included others like Bobby Bear Hug and Hoppy Hopscotch that would be sold as plushes and would spit out their own unique scents based upon their personalities, like Bobby, who is a character focused on love, emitting a rose scent, for instance. This was Playtime Co.'s most ambitious toy line yet off the back of the recent Huggy success, and Leith, being the businessman he was, loved this idea and sank absolutely all the money he could into the line, creating tons of the plushies to sell and even producing an entire cartoon to build the brand further. But he also had one more trick under his sleeve, specifically with the last smiling critter, Catnap, who was the critter all about getting enough sleep, with his plush scent originally being lavender. However, after seeing what Elliot was doing with all the Poppy Playtime flower stuff and the success of her Poppy scent as a toy back in 1950, Leith and his team would instead create a new gas for catnap, this time made from the poppy flowers, being a dark, thick red that when administered and tested had extremely strong sleeping properties, knocking people out completely like how catnap would in the show, while also having notable adverse effects like night terrors and nightmares. Regardless, during production, employees noticed the red smoke coming from the plushes, but chose to send them out anyway, leading up to 1989, where the plushes and the cartoon would finally release, where things went horribly. The show itself was very unpopular. Children were extremely scared of Catnap, who was completely silent and spewed the intimidating gas to the critters in a terrifyingly uncanny way, making the show almost immediately a failure. But perhaps most horrifying of all was the plushes themselves, specifically Catnaps, as after the plushes went out to stores, Playtime Co. would instantly fall under extreme controversy. Children began to have horrifying nightmares after getting the Catnap plush and inhaling said red gas, as news articles and television urged parents to not let their children near the Catnap plush or any of these fallen critters for that matter, destroying the company's entire reputation overnight. Playtime Co. eventually ended up recalling the Catnap plush completely while trying to save the rest of the line and creating new alternate lines like the Nightmare Critters, but it was no use. Nobody wanted to step anywhere near the critters anymore, and just like that, with the snap of a finger, the factory Elliot Ludwig had produced was now in a major depression. The millions of dollars invested were wasted, the smiling critters were a failure, and the company seemed like it was on a one-way spiral out of existence. With Playtime Co.'s reputation being destroyed by the Catnap disaster, Leith Pierre was getting desperate. He was running low on funds, and if nothing changed soon, Playtime Co. was going to go down in flames quickly. His only real hope left was Poppy and the red gel. If he could figure out how these things worked and could create real living toys just like Elliot, the company would have no competition. They'd have the best toys on the market by far. The only issue is he didn't know how they worked. And in an act of desperation, he needed some help and would turn over to Elliot's Young Geniuses program from a few decades back, hiring an investigator, Jared Lockhart, to track down all of the old applicants and list out what they've done as they aged, where one above them all seemed to stick out among the rest. Dr. Harley Sawyer, who had, since his days at Playtime Co., became a neuroscientist with years of experience under his belt. And while he was originally kicked by Elliot Ludwig for his lack of morals, with no real other options, Leith brought him back, sending a letter bringing him onto the team on January 15th, 1990, where when doing so, Harley went to work, trying to figure out how the Poppy doll's life worked by taking the toy apart piece by piece to find that inside were real-life human remains. Knowing it was then possible to create a living toy out of an organism, Sawyer then kept studying the Poppy doll while creating a few small experiments of his own to try and recreate the success. But it was when reading back on Elliot's rat experiment when Sawyer saw it notably cited that while rats were unsuccessful, larger test subjects might reveal better results. But then, where was he going to get a larger body to experiment on? Well, conveniently, Elliot had recently perished and had an available and capable body open for testing. After all, it's not like he had a family that would notice where his body went. So Harley took out some of his bones and other parts and mixed it with various different metals found throughout the factory to again try and recreate life. And behold, upon doing this, it was seemingly a success. He had created a quad robotic creature that was living, breathing, and moving, named Experiment 1006 to continue off the numbers of Elliot Ludwig, also known as the prototype, Harley's first test at creating life. The prototype was very interesting because while at his core he was just a bunch of random parts strapped together, he was extremely intelligent just like Elliot, almost too intelligent, seemingly retaining the smart and inventor-like qualities of his original body, but morally was completely different, being extremely violent towards the employees that tried to contain him, even using his inventor skills to craft a laser pointer from an alarm clock in his cell, and destroy the camera watching in on his chamber, where when an employee would enter to check up on him, he would kill them.
The prototype seemingly disassembled the digital alarm clock within his room and utilized the battery along with several other components to create a laser pointer, which he then fired into the security camera, disabling it. Once function returned to the camera, the room appeared to be empty. One surveillance specialist went in to confirm his absence. However, the prototype had hidden in one of the camera's blind spots. One casualty occurred.
Otherwise, the creation, despite being living and breathing, didn't need to eat or anything to survive, which was a plus. And he also couldn't speak, but had the ability to mimic other people's voices, listening in on the many conversations around the factory collecting data. So overall, the prototype was a success, but he was extremely dangerous. Employees advised Harley Sawyer to destroy the creation, however he refused, as he found his intelligence to be extraordinary and worth studying, so he would keep him around for now. But another problem still faced.
At the time, my schizophrenia.
Harley had no more capable bodies to experiment on and needed to find a use for these experiments fast for Leith Pierre, or face the company shutting down and losing the job he had been wanting since a young boy. Conveniently for Harley though, Elliot had spent his time building up an entire orphanage below the factory, filled with children that had no families to account for them and check up on them if something were to happen. Plus, he also had this red smoke technology created by Leith that could be used to control when they were awake and when they were asleep, like their very own personal anesthesia. This led to Harley experimenting on some of the children and tried shoving them into the shells of the brand's iconic toys to try and make something valuable for Leith and the business to sell, but was met with failure after failure after failure. Some instances including Experiment 1015, who showed minor brain activity but otherwise didn't work in the slightest, or a little while later Experiment 1026, who survived for 45 minutes and held promise, being able to look at whoever was talking to them and even track down an employee's index finger when prompted, but otherwise was also unsuccessful. He couldn't reproduce what he did with the prototype into the shell of an actual toy like Elliot did, only being able to create experiments that would live for a few seconds and die off in their small toy bodies. It was not working. But then he chose to try something life-changing. What if instead of trying to cram a human body into a small toy-sized creature, he chose to make the toys themselves larger, human-sized toys? This would solve everything, as Harley would no longer need to fit all of the parts into a tiny toy-sized body, and it could still provide value to the company, as Leith would no longer need to worry about hiring and paying employees or even about factory lawsuits, since he could instead replace all of the employees with these larger, stronger toys that could also be used as a selling point for Playtime Co.'s famous tours. To pitch this idea, he would work on Experiment 1160, a bigger version of the toy Boxy Boo, which ended up being a massive success. Similar to Poppy, it could move, breathe, and think like a real human, with the only real downside being that he required food to survive, unlike the prototype. Harley showed Boxy off to Leith Pierre to pitch the program the Bigger Bodies Initiative, which Leith would ultimately approve of, assigning each bigger body Harley would create with their own specific task. Boxy Boo's was to be the factory's Punisher, as in order to ensure nobody found out about the experiments they were working on, Harley would tailor Boxy Boo's appetite to human flesh, so in case any employees or tour guests saw anything they weren't supposed to, they wouldn't leave with the factory secrets, but that wouldn't be a problem for now. In order to ramp up production further, Eddie Ritterman would re-sign with Warrenbach Construction later in 1990 to build even more things. Firstly, creating a larger laboratory for the experiments under the entire factory where nobody would find it, offering $100,000 hours to warn back to keep it all a secret. They would build the gas production zone, which would produce the red smoke and distribute it throughout the factory, specifically into Playcare as they needed to settle down the children, while they would also create the game station, a building connected directly to Playcare by a child-occupied train that on the surface was disguised as a playground area where children could have fun and play in their 3 mini-games: Musical Memory, a game of Simon Says, Whack-a-Wuggy, a game of Whack-a-Mole, and Statues, a game of Red Light, Green Light. However, in reality, this place was actually built so that scientists could test the children's physical and mental cognition in the games and pick the best ones for experimentation based on their performance. Also creating the 3 games mascots, Bunzo Bunny, Mini Huggies, and PJ Pugapillar, into real bigger bodies to run the games for them. With all these expansions, they would hire a ton of new scientists to work and mass produce these creations, like Dr. White, another prodigy from the Young Geniuses program, and a biologist by the name PW, who will matter more later. But together, they would start to mass produce a ton of these toys, creating some failures like Pianosaurus Experiment 1163, who acted like a rabid animal attacking anything in sight with no real other use, and Yarnaby Experiment 1166, who was once a child named Quinn Navidson, originally deemed to be a bad kid as his game station performance was low, but after being mentored by Harley himself, improved his score tremendously and would be chosen to be turned into the Yarnaby monster, who for whatever reason displayed an odd sense of loyalty to certain staff members, leading to Harley Sawyer manipulating this emotion by isolating himself with Yarnaby until he became so emotionally dependent on him that he could control Yarnaby and what he did completely, which would become a problem later in the timeline when something we'll discuss would happen to Harley, leaving Yarnaby grieving and unable to do anything for weeks.
Yes, it's me again. It's the time for empowerment, and I've got...
But as time went on, they also started to create more successful experiments, like with Huggy Wuggy Experiment 1170, who was tasked with being the playtime security guard and was seen as obedient, rarely fighting back with staff, and Kissy Missy Experiment 1172, who was similar to Huggy in almost every way. So the Bigger Bodies initiative was generally successful. They were building tons of new experiments that didn't always work, but they were at least getting better every time, and they even started to replace the workers in Playcare by creating toys like Miss Delight and various different clones of her to replace all the teachers in the school area. However, to cut costs even further, for their next project, they wanted to create a new bigger body that would spit the red smoke around Home Sweet Home where the children would sleep for them. And calling back to the Smiling Critters fiasco, they decided who else but a monster version of Catnap to fit the role. They had already around this point began testing bigger body versions of previous Smiling Critters like Bobby Bear Hug, Hoppy Hopscotch, and Dog Day. So they already had an idea on what to do and how to make him successful. So they began developing plans to create a tall, lanky Catnap monster with cat-like qualities and a gas delivery apparatus implanted into his esophagus. So while the creature roamed the area, red gas would naturally emit from his mouth while he breathed. They also detailed a long list of different children in Playcare they wanted to use for this experiment, with one in particular standing out among the rest, Theodore Grambow. Theo was a mysterious child who didn't really have any real friends around him and instead would often talk about having some kind of imaginary friend. And when looking through Theo's drawings, they would find a sketch of said friend, 1006, the prototype, who had seemingly escaped his cell and was now lurking around Playcare befriending Theo. However, this wasn't an even relationship, as the prototype would begin to use Theo, who would get caught digging through Playtime Co. employee files under the order of his imaginary friend, and would also steal 2 sets of grab pack hands and green electric hand attachments, an extension they added to the hands to allow electricity to be transferred to doors and power them him on. Then, suddenly, one night at Home Sweet Home, Theo made a run for the exit with 1006, attempting to power on the doors to leave Playcare using the green electric hands. However, being only a 7-year-old child, Theo would accidentally misfire and shock himself, leaving himself with severe burns while opening the exit gates. But from here, something really interesting happened. The prototype at any moment could have made a run for it, leaving Theo to die and escaping Playcare alone. But in what must have been a moment of the true Elliot inside of him showing, he had a change of heart, and instead alerted authorities to Theo's injuries, saving his life, but getting himself caught in the process. Following this event, seeing Theo's rowdiness, they decided that he would be the prime victim to be chosen for Catnap Experiment 1188 in November of 1990, which upon operation could generally be considered a success, as he could walk around and spit the red smoke as he was supposed to. But that's not to say he didn't have a few various problems. For one, the children found Catnap to be really scary at first, which was obviously bad since he was supposed to be around them every night. Plus, eventually his voice box broke, giving him a scary, raspy voice. But by far, his biggest issue was that he was seemingly obsessed with the prototype. As a child, the prototype was his only true friend, and after saving his life in the Green Hand incident, Catnap saw the prototype like a god, following him around wherever he went in the same way a puppy would follow its owner. He was completely under 1006's control more than even the employee.
When it's Christmas time in Texas, it might look just like a summer.
But even more issues would arrive on November 20th, 1990, as inside of Playcare's Playhouse, they had created a bunch of holding cells in order to hold the experiments until they were needed. And while attempting to confine Catnap into one of these holding cells, he would, in a fit of rage, escape and go on a rampage, attacking 6 employees and killing them before several tranquilizer darts were shot into him, subduing him, with one of the witnesses and reporter of the incident being the biologist PW, urging for better safety equipment while seeing firsthand the inhumanity of these experiments and what it did to the children inside the bodies. Regardless, this situation would be covered up by the company, and afterwards, Leith Pierre would begin to put together a group known as the Resource Extraction Specialists, who were in charge of collecting parts and evidence after tragedies just like this one, also building an employee-only train station used so they could quickly move throughout the dangerous areas, which are good things, but they also cost the company a lot of money. For now though, Catnap would keep getting evaluated into 1991, where things started to lighten up as the bigger bodies kept expanding. For instance, in light of the recent tragedy, they would also build the Safe Haven, a bunkered off room that ran on its own power system with highly protected doors and safety features, designed so employees in the event of another emergency could go and hide inside until it was safe to leave. And going back to Playcare, the scientists grew interested in experimenting on the child Marie Payne, who didn't fit particularly well inside, as she responded super negatively to the red smoke, having severe night terrors when administered. So they would instead turn her into an original toy experiment, Mommy Longlegs, a stretchy long-arm toy that after creating was at first really concerning, as while she was loving and kind to her fellow orphans, she was violent towards the employees. So to get use out of her, they transferred her to the game station as the children's daycare attendant, while they examined from far away, and the children loved her so much that they even created a toy out of her to sell to the public, being another big success for Playtime Co. There was also another child in Playcare worth noting who was named Ollie, a child who at first wouldn't seem notable as he was just another kid in the thousands that flooded the Playcare's orphanage, but the main difference was he had a phone of some sorts that allowed him to communicate across the factory, specifically with another super important child, Poppy. These two never saw each other, but at some point began actively communicating through this phone, where Poppy, who was struggling with being forced to let employees study her and take her apart, was able to confide in Ollie and talk with him to help calm her down.
I'm here. Are you feeling okay?
Lippo 9.
Say what they want.
Lippo
They don't
9
care
for
how much anything hurts. It's been weeks and weeks of taking things out and putting them back in, and taking things out and putting them back in, over and over and over. Nothing's ever gotten better, and it'll never get better. I'm nothing now, Ollie. You're not nothing to me. You're Poppy. I'm here, Poppy. For you, I'll always be here.
Giving her only true friend in the factory after being turned into the monster she felt she was. Speaking of monsters, following this, with all of these different experiments roaming around the factory, the secret was bound to slip at some point about what was truly going on down here. And at first, it would start small, as on March 21st, employee Marcus Brickley would report to Leith Pierre seeing a 1,000-legged monster in the cafeteria roaming around.
I took a peek beneath the gate, and some massive bloody thing was doddering about the bloody hallway.
Thing? You're sure it wasn't a person?
Ain't no person that's 50 feet long with 1,000 legs.
Not knowing it was a bigger body of PJ Puggabeller. Thankfully, though, this report stayed small, as Leith rubbed it off as being in Marcus's imagination, and eventually he forgot about it. However, just over a week later, on March 30th, employee Rowan Stoll, a Playtime Co. IT specialist, would make another report claiming it looked like the Huggy statue in the lobby was watching guests on the tours, unaware it was a living thing. However, unlike Marcus, Rowan kept investigating and started digging into Playtime Co.'s secrets in search of answers, learning about the Bigger Bodies initiative and what Playtime Co. was working on behind the scenes, which obviously horrified him, and he wanted to get the word out. So he would use his IT skills and uploaded all of his findings onto a computer server. However, quickly, Playtime Co. caught on to this and would try to kill Rowan by doing things like messing with the wheels of his car, hoping for an accident. This obviously scared Rowan, since a big company was coming after him, and he realized his fate was coming near. So he wrote a letter containing the information to access the computer files he was working on, containing all of the secrets, sending it out to his mother on July 15th, 1991, while also recording one final VHS tape saying his final goodbyes, and detailing his plan to release all of his findings during the next week's security maintenance.
Roku's self-serve ads platform. It's easier than ever with Ads Manager. Sign up today.
Next week, I've scheduled the company, the servers, the security to be shut down for 60 minutes of maintenance. While security is out, I'm going to release everything and run.
Where days later, they finally caught him in a room with Boxy Boo, who finally got to put his human appetite to work, eating Rowan's soul and killing him. Then a few more days later, on July 20th, during Rowan's planned maintenance, Playtime Co. would instead wipe all of their computer databases, including the files he planned to release, keeping all of their company secrets hidden, at least for now. Things generally coasted along for the rest of the year for Playtime Co., leading into 1992, where there started to be another problem. As with Elliot Ludwig being dead, the employees seemingly started to store various different body parts inside of his house, including those of a young experimented on child that was eventually discovered by the public, which obviously was bad for the company's reputation. And furthermore, on June 18th of the same year, for seemingly no reason, one of Playtime Co.'s best and most successful and obedient toys, Huggy Wuggy, would suddenly snap and break for Playtime Co.'s exit, escaping the factory during the night and wreaking complete havoc in the outside forest, killing multiple employees and even being spotted in residential neighborhoods. And while thankfully both of these incidents were able to be swept under the rug, as Elliot's neighbors already saw him as weird, giving them a good alibi justify for the body being there, and they managed to subdue Huggy without any of the public seeing him, these close calls were starting to get worrying and also showed that the monsters were seemingly getting more and more aggressive over time, especially since in another experiment 1199, the employees turned worker Thomas Clark into a Braun toy after he contracted lung cancer to try and save his life, but was almost immediately attacked by the other toys who could tell he was an employee, showing how much more aggressive they were getting. Speaking of which, Harley Sawyer in the background kept studying his first creation, the prototype, who as well started to show more signs of aggression. For instance, in a log of Harley Sawyer's, he finally opened up and spoke to him, asking if he felt any kind of remorse for what he was doing to the toys, and how he was forcing them to live these terrible lives in the name of progress.
Ready to talk now, are you? I possess
A question.
Go ahead.
Do you feel anything? You stick us.
Beat us.
Tear at flesh.
Do you feel it?
But moving into Christmas of 1992, the accidents wouldn't stop, as the child Jack, who was a big fan of Playtime Co., was gifted a tour to the factory in the following year, 1993. However, while at the tour in the sector where the famous Doughy Dough was being created, he accidentally slipped over the guardrails and fell into the dough itself, consuming him and killing him right in front of his parents. This was another Playtime Co. tragedy that they had to deal with, but thankfully this time they had a plan, as they had already been producing all of these experiments out of children for years now. So they decided to try and keep this story from reaching the public. They would attempt to revive Jack by turning him into a bigger body of his favorite toy, Doughy the Dough Man. The only issue is Jack was just a small child, and in order to create Doughy, he was going to have to be a large 900-pound beast. So to complete the experiment, they would need to combine him with two other children they already had in play care. Those two being Matthew Hollard, an older and more mature child, and Kevin Barnes, a smart but also extremely temperamental child. And when combining all three of these to create Doughy, it was only partially a success, as the three personalities would constantly clash with each other and take control, with him sometimes being cute and friendly like the child Jack, wise and mature like the child Matthew, or on the negative side, angry and aggressive like Kevin. Regardless, they would invite Jack's parents over to the factory to show that they saved their son. And upon entering the testing chamber with Doughy, they were horrified by what they saw. A massive half-ton being of Doughy the Dough Man meant to be their child.
What did you do to him? Dear, look at it. That's not even human!
Regardless though, they tried to talk with the creature where instead of displaying the personality of Jack, he almost immediately became aggressive with the parents and started violently attacking them.
Hey, you'll be okay, I promise. Mommy's only here to talk.
No, I don't want to talk! Get out! Susan, get away from it!
Jack?
And despite them begging the employees to be let out of the chamber during this attack,
open this door!
The scientists couldn't just let them see this and report it to the public, so unfortunately they had to leave it closed where both of the parents died.
Please, open the door! Please!
And afterward, Doughy realized what he did and switched personalities back to Jack, crying over both of his dead parents. So following all of these major incidents, the company, and specifically Leith Pierre, began to grow frustrated with Harley Sawyer. He had hired him to save the company money and their reputation after the catnap disaster, but all of these incidents put them just one bad day away from the company being ruined again, which Harley was aware of as he began to grow extremely strict towards his employees and colleagues, urging them to be perfect and threatening that they were just one bad day away. He even went went livid on the Playtime Co. chefs for accidentally putting pickles in his sandwiches that he didn't like. So tensions were at an all-time high, and around this point, Harley ran into another major issue. He had kept experimenting on these bodies all this time, creating dozens upon dozens of experiments, but as more were created, he didn't really have anywhere to put all of them. There were only a few cells inside of the playhouse to store them, and otherwise they would just freely roam around the factory, which led to issues like the Marcus Brickley one from before. So to try and fix this, he would begin to store the monsters inside of the Playtime Theater, where he would use the inactive experiments for the shows tour guests would watch to create an ultra-realistic experience, since of course the toy actors were the real things, solving the problem of having nowhere to put them. However, as the toys would begin to pile up in the theater, this quickly became a ticking time bomb that on one fateful day would go off, and the many toys shoved in the theater during a performance would, as you would expect, go haywire, attacking everybody inside of the theater watching the show, including 66 different people who were killed, 12 of which being employees and the others all being innocent civilians from the outside world, with presumably hundreds of other witnesses. This was the final straw. Harley's experiments had finally attacked civilians like what they were worried about, and just like that, the company he was hired to build back up after the massive controversy in 1989 was put in the negative spotlight once again, destroying all of the work he had tried to fix over the past 4 years. Leith was infuriated and would gather the other higher-ups, Stella Graber and Eddie Ritterman, to task the private investigator Jared Lockhart once again with investigating the theater incident and confirming their suspect, where quickly, as they thought, the one responsible seemed clear.
Dr. Harley Sawyer.
Things at this point had gone too far, and Sawyer needed to be stopped. The experiments were out of control. They had ruined the company he had tried to build up. However, at the same time, they couldn't just get rid of Sawyer, as his knowledge to create the experiments was still extremely valuable and is what got them this far in the first place. So they needed a way to control his body while still keeping his mind intact, giving them the idea to give Harley a taste of his own medicine by tasking scientist Dr. White to experiment on his body and create him into an experiment of his own. Experiment 1354, the Doctor. Taking Harley Sawyer's various different vital body parts, and specifically his brain, and shoving them into a bunch of old machines of Elliot Ludwig's to maintain them, attaching them to Playtime Co.'s computer system so they could power him on and off as needed. Then they would finally activate him, turning him on where he successfully woke up, but definitely wasn't very happy as he began to scream at Leith Pierre, threatening to eventually kill him for what he's done.
Let me tell you how this is gonna go, Sawyer. From now on, you're here to give the lab boys answers when they need them. That's it. You'll be an open book to us whenever we want.
You're tied for this, Leith. When I get my hands on you, you're
However, at least for now, Harley was dealt with finally. As for the other experiments, they couldn't just shove them all back into the theater where Harley left them. Another incident like this was just bound to happen again. So instead, Eddie Ritterman hit up Warnbach Construction and ordered the production of the Playtime Prison, something Warnbach desperately did not want to do as they slowly realized what was going on deep into the factory. But Eddie left them with no real choice after their contract in 1990 that legally forced them to build it.
I don't like what I'm supposed to be building here. What in the world would a toy company need with a prison? Let me give you a bit of history. In 1972, you signed a contract. A legally binding piece of paper that says whatever is asked of you, you do it. In 1990, you signed another, a renewal. So now you do the work, because we've given you a directive. I get paid to see that things get done. And this, like everything else, will get done.
Where from there, they would hire themselves the warden, who was in charge of watching all of the experiments put into the prison, and also got access to the Omni Hand, a Playtime Co. grab pack hand they were working on that was only given to the main higher-ups in the company: Leith Pierre, Stella Graber, Eddie Ritterman, and of course now the warden, which gave them access to every door in all of the factory. Alongside the prison, they would build these secondary labs, which is where Harley Sawyer was stored, and would be ran by Dr. White, placed right next to the prison so they could harvest the body parts of failed experiments and use them on better experiments instead of just letting them roam around where another accident can happen. As the factory would roll into 1994 and early 1995, it kept moving and generally was growing, with other small experiments being made like the mini critters and mini nightmare critters that were built as technology progressed and the scientists were able to create smaller bodies, like what was originally planned at the start of the program. However, from here, other looming issues began to come up. On the employee side, when trying to expand the company further, the employees found that the red gas that they had built pipes around the entire factory for was extremely flammable. So continuing building underneath the factory was dangerous since the pressure down below was greater and one small fire or explosion could explode the entire factory from the bottom up. So to combat this, they started to produce canisters of liquid nitrogen that were designed to keep things cool in emergencies. While on the monster side, Kissy Missy, one of the earlier successful experiments, started to show severe signs of anxiety. So bad to a point where she could no longer work and they had to put her into storage for the time being to hopefully calm her down. But Kissy wasn't the only one who began to get anxious, as along with her, the employee and biologist from the past, PW, began to get worried about the state of the company and all of the experiments they were forced to work on, having a growing guilt building in the back of their mind. This wasn't morally right, experimenting on these kids until they turned into violent monsters that were going crazy, and it started to weigh on PW heavily as they would contemplate quitting and would take days off when the orphans would visit, not wanting to look them in the eye. So, like other people had tried to do in the past, they began to log down the things going on in the factory, collecting various different papers and evidence against the factory and putting them into one of their orientation notebooks, exposing the full story of Playtime Co. and their experiments to be left behind if something ever happened. And speaking of which, during this entire time, the tensions between the employees and the monsters, more specifically the prototype, only kept growing. 1006 was no longer going to keep letting these experiments happen. This was his factory before, and he grew sick day by day watching it become a place of corporate greed and scientific cynicism. He needed to stop it all. And after seeing what happened in the 1993 theater incident, he knew that the other experiments were his key to freedom. So over the next few months, the prototype began to create a plan with the toys, saying that if they all at the exact same time attacked every single employee and human being in the factory, they could kill all of them like how they did in the theater incident, and the prototype would free them from their torment and solitude. And of course, they saw how the prototype saved Catnap as a child and had attacked employees in the past, so they knew that they could trust him to finally free them. The date they chose for this attack was August 8th, 1995 at 11 a.m. Playtime Co. kept running up until this day, even constructing new buildings like a Playtime Park. However, when the fateful day would finally arrive, at this fateful time, the toys finally, once and for all, attacked. Almost every single monster in the entire factory went haywire at the exact same time. Catnap attacked everyone in Playcare, Miss Delight attacked everyone in the school, Huggy attacked all the tour guides up in the main lobby, Kissy Missy was actually in the process of being transported to Playcare from Storage B when the incident happened, where she attacked the extraction specialists. Every single adult human that was there that day was killed. One employee who attempted to escape was the warden, who ran into Harley Sawyer on his way out, where he begged him for some help. So Harley had made him an offer. If he gave Sawyer that Omni hand he had that could control all of the doors in the factory, Harley, who was connected to the computer system, could use it to open all of the doors for him remotely and give him a way out. The warden, out of desperation, agreed, giving Sawyer full control to the factory, where we never hear from him again. However, while we can assume he died among the rubble, one person actually did survive the hour. None other than PW, who had fortunately missed work this day and therefore wasn't there for the hour that killed every single employee but them. With the next day, all of the other employees
get me up, gang.
Hearing and Playtime
People
Co.
magic while I'm in jail.
Shop everyday low prices on stocking stuffers at Hobby Lobby with gifts for kids.
Yet ceasing to exist. But this wasn't it for the monsters, as going back into the factory, every toy was seemingly freed from the control of the employees, and like the prototype promised, no longer had to live in this factory. They were all safe. Except the prototype wasn't being fully honest, as despite saying all the toys would be freed afterwards, that was kind of a lie. I mean, they were humans turned into toys. They couldn't exit here and live in a society like this even if they wanted to. Instead, the prototype didn't want to just kill the employees that ran his factory as a person. He wanted to take over himself. Since the place after this almost immediately erupted into pure anarchy and chaos. Every toy that survived the attack were all instantly forced to fend for themselves, hunting for the remaining food in the factory, whether that be from the old workers' bodies or even eventually having to kill each other just for a bite to eat. Some did this and survived, while others refused and would rot away slowly. However, the prototype, who didn't need to eat, had devised a plan to take back control of the factory by creating his very own cult, where with his companion Catnap, who stuck by his side this entire time, he would offer the toys to go under the prototype's worship and rule, to be rewarded with protection and food to sustain themselves, while also striking a deal with the Playcare School's teacher, Miss Delight, who after the Hour of Joy was locked inside of the school for an unknown reason with all of her sisters, where after spiraling into insanity and going days with no food, she built herself a friend/weapon, Barb, and used them to kill all of her sisters and eat them. However, before running out of food, the school's doors would unlock and it was revealed Catnap was there, who offered to take care of her from there and protect her as long as she protected the school and reported what she saw to the prototype. However, as for the ones who would choose not to follow this cult, you would be hunted and used for food for the rest. Now, this would all mainly be held inside of Playcare, or at least what was left of Playcare, where some experiments like the mini critters would worship the prototype, others like Hoppy Hopscotch would successfully run away, while less fortunate ones like Dog Day would try to pretend to be on the prototype side at first, but would eventually be captured and held in the Playcare prison for the followers to feast on his body day by day, bit by bit. While this was all going on, the prototype, who spared all of the orphans inside of Playcare, wanted to move them deep underground into the Playtime labs and store them where they would never be found. However, in order to do this, shockingly, he would begin to work with none other than Harley Sawyer, who, being an experiment, survived the attack and was approached by the prototype. Sure, they didn't like each other, but Harley wanted to keep experimenting and progressing his mission, while the prototype needed an Omni hand to access the rest of Playtime Co. So together they would collaborate, giving the prototype access to the entire factory, while in return helping Harley with experimentation, creating things like the Dr. Minions, allowing him to physically move around the factory once again through these robotic beings. Outside of those two, while the outskirts of the factory were turned into a complete wasteland, it wasn't all bad for the rest of the toys, as some of them actually managed to make it into Playtime Co.'s safe haven built by the workers before the factory went down, which, as mentioned, was completely sealed off from the entire rest of the place. Nobody could access it and nobody could open it from the outside, with some of the main notable survivors being Hoppy Hopscotch, who made it here, a Boogie Bot who they turned into a medic, Poppy Playtime, Kissy Missy, and the leader of the safe haven, Doughy the Doman. They all gathered together to live in here on their own generator and would even go on trips to bring food to the helpless experiments around the rest of the factory.
Want to create content that'll stop people skipping? 2 words, babes. Canva Pro. Actually, 3 more words. 50.
The only issue was, in the depths of the factory, all that remained over the years outside of the prototype's cult were these vicious, bloodthirsty critters inhabiting the open worlds that moved around hunting and trying to get a bite of anything they could find, fending for themselves. This led to the toys sometimes getting attacked, like Hoppy Hopscotch, who got jumped in an expedition, making it back with severe injuries and eventually dying. This obviously was horrifying and began to scare the toys inside of the safe haven and incite panic. For instance, Doughy, who was supposed to be the leader of the safe haven, had the tendency to randomly leave and daydream about escaping the factory.
For the past few months, the fighting's been bad. I'm here, outside the prison, and seeing this again, it's given me reason to think I could make for the exit.
Only turning back when realizing the children needed them, while Poppy was not so lucky. Still being a young child, she tended to panic and run away when stressed out, with her on one of these panic-inducing days choosing to completely leave Safe Haven, where upon her exit, she wouldn't return, scaring the survivors that the worst had happened. So they built her a shrine and sketched out drawings begging for her return. However, outside of Safe Haven, during her run and escape, she ran into none other than the prototype 1006, who had been looking for her for years. This was the first experiment and was by far the most perfect. It was Elliot's daughter before Elliot became the prototype, and despite her hiding away and not knowing 1006's true identity, he was still emotionally connected to her and found her valuable to his mission. He couldn't just kill her or let her leave, so instead he brought her back up to the home where they used to spend all their time together as a human. And to ensure she didn't run away,
I just beat my fucking
unbeatable
unbeatable robot,
she was always home, and the prototype could still have that one semblance
Brochacho.
of a family life amidst all this chaos.
I've done it. The double-edged death.
From here on out, this would go on for
has beat
more years.
the
until
Red
the year
Death.
2005, 10 years after the Hour of Joy, where Kissy Missy, the anxiety freak she
just
is,
instantly
began
gets that
to
shit.
get worried. The prototype was being logged and tracked by the Safe Haven members, and as time went on, he started to figure out how to get past their traps set up to keep him away. And their generator locking the doors shut from the outside was having issues and needed to be fixed fast before it broke. This obviously was a severe problem, and she needed somebody to save them. And thankfully, being an employee herself, she knew about PW, who had escaped the Hour of Joy and had some kind of sympathy while working here. So using her primitive writing skills, she sketched out a note claiming the staff was still there, since of course some of the experiments survived the hour, asking PW to find the flower mural that led to Elliot and Poppy's home, where alongside she attached a VHS tape about Poppy so we knew what this was for. She would send out the letter hoping for the best, and like Poppy, left the safe haven to come searching for PW and helping them on their journey. When receiving the letter, guilt must have gotten the best of PW, as despite the potential danger, they would return to Playtime Co. once again, this time abandoned, looking for answers to what happened to the employees and maybe finally getting some clarity to soften their guilt. Starting the main games, where we play as PW themselves, who for now I'm mostly going to refer to as us or the player. Upon entering, we are met with the same old factory lobby, but this time with an ominous liminal vibe in the air. At the front lied a VHS tape by Leith Pierre, warning intruders that inside were intense security systems if they didn't turn back.
Hi, my name is Leith Pierre. If you're seeing this, then you're trespassing. This facility is full of hidden motion triggers, which, once set off, will turn on the factory's emergency alarm and directly contact the authorities. And That's one of the more tame aspects of our security system.
But as we trespass anyway, we begin to encounter the unthinkable. Toys piled all around, bloodied and dead. From here, we then acquire a grab pack of our own from the security room, and upon entering the main lobby, we're met with the horrifying sight of the Huggy Wuggy statue. Regardless though, we moved forward, and when powering on the doors to the next section, suddenly Huggy was no longer there. But he definitely wasn't fully gone from the factory, since as we kept progressing, he kept seemingly peeking around corners, hunting us down like we were some kind of prey. After traversing through some more areas and collecting a second grab pack hand, we came across Elliot Ludwig's old Make a Friend machine that was still working and powering to this day.
With 12 grams of protein per serving, Quaker is your ace in the bowl. Quaker, bring out the good.
Cross off your holiday gift list with special financing at Guitar Center. Save 20% on this Mapex drum set.
But something definitely seemed off about it, as its eyes began to follow us around almost like it was as well alive. Regardless, after using the Catbee toy it built to power on the next door, among the darkness, the Huggy Wuggy bigger body burst through, revealing himself in his entirety, an angry, savage, and hungry beast, chasing the player into a vent where he hunted us down, while writing on the walls reflected how he was desperately starving after years being in the factory, forced to fend for himself like the others. Somehow we would miraculously make it out, and using the grab pack, dropped a box on Huggy's head by the catwalks, knocking him off and down a deep, dark pit. On the other side was the flower mural we had gotten this mysterious note for, which when entering, we were met with this creepy home aesthetic Elliot Ludwig left behind. At the end, we find one final door containing none other than the trapped Poppy doll sitting unconscious waiting for us, allowing us to grab onto her case and open it, saving her once and for all, causing us to then pass out from all the intense Poppy fumes released from her hair. Poppy would then wake us up from our sleep and guide us out for home to see Elliot's office right across. After getting
gang!
You
just got caught on your own wedge.
Office, we saw what a stand-up man he was during his time and everything he sacrificed for the factory. And through his own biography explaining his story, along with drawings from some children he kept all over his walls. After me.
Hang on. Okay. Okay, replace strat close, aggro, accurate, and this. That. True, false, false, false. Driving behavior. Turn toward. I'm getting ChatGPT to write me AI code for my robot. Yeah. That copied. Yeah. That is a lot short code. Hey ChatGPT, this better fucking work. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna kill you. Did it work? Gang? Okay. Let's see if double-edged death stands a chance against. Fuck, did I mean, I forgot to put the AI mode on. Jesus Christ. This game is fucking heavy. We'll keep watching this.
Meeting back up with Poppy, she instructs us that in order to escape, we needed to access the train below in the game station. But what she failed to warn us from is Mommy Longlegs, who was still alive and as aggressive as ever. Mommy would suddenly grab and take Poppy away, blackmailing us by creating a little game. Survive the 3 game station tests and get the train code we were looking for. Where from there, after acquiring our very own green electric hand attachment, Mommy would have us play the death games challenge by challenge, facing off against their hungry bigger bodies, like Bunzo in Musical Memory and the Wuggies in Wacky Wuggy, which after progressing through
Okay.
frustrated her, causing her to kill them and tie them up in webs. However, when exiting the second game, we would enter a train station where we were trapped, as there was a gate blocking our way, making it impossible to pass. Shortly thereafter, though, a new friend would reveal themselves from the shadows. It was Kissy Missy, who had been waiting for our arrival and was behind the gate, opening it and then leaving us to continue on our way for the time being, leading up to the third and final game, Statues, ran by PJ Pugapillar. And here, something Mommy Longlegs cleverly hid from us was that after making it to the end of the room, the ending was barricaded off, creating a dead end, showing Mommy never truly wanted us to survive. But yet, we managed to break into the observation rooms on the sides, miraculously making it out, which Mommy considered cheating, infuriating her and causing her to go insane, chasing us down through a game of hide and seek all the way until she ran into a grinder, getting stuck inside before we powered it on, where her body would be shredded up into pieces slowly and gruesomely. As she dies, she warned us of a mysterious threat. Before her body falls down and we see the person she was warning us about, the prototype who had survived this whole time, reaching out from under a gate and taking her body away, presumably to...
It needs to swing wider, a lot wider. Are Robot Rumble 2 tournaments the serious
subject for him in Sawyer's experiment?
It is absolutely the serious.
When moving on, we met back up with Poppy, who seemed much more determined and less happy and bubbly, as after seeing us defeat so many of these bigger bodies, this gave Poppy an ambitious idea. When getting on the train, she would suddenly change the tracks and force PW deeper into the factory, specifically into their orphanage, Playcare. She would then accidentally make the train go too fast and it would end up crashing, knocking us out once more. However, this time, when waking up, we were in the grasp of none other than Catnap, who dumped us away into a garbage disposal, forcing us to crawl our way out. And upon escaping, while Poppy was nowhere to be found, seemingly running away like how she did in the past, we then came...
Okay. Hopefully this time
across a phone ringing for us that, when answering, had none other than Poppy's old friend Ollie speaking on it. When listening to him, he seemed to be super fond of us and wanted to help us out.
Hey, can you hear me? You look kind of lost. I don't want you to die, so I'm gonna help you.
Guiding us through Playcare's entrance and into the tram that sent us into Playcare itself. From here, we would be brought to none other than the gas production zone, the place where the mysterious red gas was being produced. And Ollie tasked us with moving the gas from Playcare on the right to down in the Playtime Co's prison on the left. However, when attempting to do this, the power would conveniently shut down. And from there, we were forced to go into the the various different care buildings and activate backup generators
Get off
to
me!
repower everything. Firstly, we'd go into Home Sweet Home, where the surviving bigger body Catnap often resided, flooding the place with red smoke that, when inhaled, caused us to enter a violent dream state. Walking around what we thought was Home Sweet Home, we began to hear news reports flashing back to the body of the young child found in Elliot's home.
Tragic news this morning. As of 9:45 a.m., local authorities report that the body of a young boy has been found on the estate of the late Elliot Ludwig.
Something that shook PW back when they worked here, realizing the morbid reality of the things they were experimenting on. Furthermore, we ran into a radio tape of the reporter this time shaming us for missing the hour of joy. The day where...
Come on. Okay. This code should work, but that's also what I said about these previous attempts, so... I'm not going to sleep until this shit works. I gave it specific clarifications.
For everybody,
ChatGPT should have given me the
PW
exact
was supposed to die.
AI
My good prices and truce. After all this time, you returned. 8/8/1995. You were supposed to be here. Why weren't you here? You missed the event. You missed the meeting. You missed the party.
The survivor's guilt was weighing heavy on PW as we then reached their old office when they were an employee. That again reminded PW of the guilt haunting over us. Finally coming across the labs room where we originally created the experiments. And when walking in, the door shut behind us, and out of the TV, a large, demonic, and evil version of Huggy Wuggy would climb out and chase us down the room, attacking us and giving us what we felt was the punishment we deserved for what we did.
Roku's self-serve ad platform. It's easier than ever with Ads Manager. Sign up today.
Why is La Roche-Posay recommended by dermatologists worldwide? Highly effective skincare. La Roche-Posay Face Moisturizer. More than just a moisturizer. Helps repair skin barrier in...
However, thankfully, this was all just a dream as we woke up, but now PW was determined to keep digging for this factory's secrets. It's what they owed to the lost children stuck here that they created. Moving through Home Sweet Home, we powered on its generator, where while leaving, we would suddenly be stopped and attacked by none other than Kissy Missy, who in a fit of terror aggressively...
Okay. This should work. This should work, guys. I was very, very specific. Because that one was the closest we ever gotten, because it would actually hit the bot. But it wasn't doing it fast enough, and it wasn't doing it hard enough, and it would just stay there until, like, eventually, like, waited out its time and then switch to the other spinner. We want it continuously fucking hitting it like that, motherfucker. That's what we're going for.
Aggressively pounced us. However, thankfully, Poppy was right beside her and calmed her down, letting us go. Kissy was still very clearly traumatized by the events of the Hour of Joy and the friends she lost along the way. However, we were here to help, and her plan to get us to come back had worked. From here, Poppy finally explained to us the reason she didn't let us leave is because she saw us as capable for some kind of mysterious mission, after seeing our actions in the past, and even expressed wanting to kill the prototype, although she doesn't go much further. From here, we would continue on, powering up the school, which still held a corrupted version of Miss Delight, who we'd make it past. From there, we would travel through a large cave system that inside contained what appeared to be a shrine made up from a bunch of dead toys that Catnap had made for his god, the prototype, that he would go and pray to daily. When progressing through, we made it to the playhouse, which held seemingly infinite mini living critters that were a part of the prototype's cult as well. And when making it past all of them, we were met with the playhouse prison that held one last standing heretic, Dogberry, who would panically beg for our help in stopping everything going on here, but not for too long, as the critters would all come out and finish him off once and for all, eating him, while also possessing his body and chasing us out of the playhouse. The next and final place to power on was the counselor's office, that when activating finally gave Ollie the power needed to activate the gas production zone once.
Okay. Oh, God, I don't want to be here all night. Okay. This one should work.
Once again. However, on our way out, Catnap was actually waiting for us and attacked once more, causing us to enter another dream sequence where this time we remember seeing what the factory looked like before the Hour of Joy, getting a glimpse of all of the children that we were experimenting on. But alas, we had woke up and survived. However, Catnap was definitely not happy. So from there, Playcare was fully repowered, and Ollie sent the final blue battery cell to the gas production zone, where when entering, Catnap seemingly got tired of us and made his final attack, chasing us up into an elevator shaft where red gas filled the area, and we began to hallucinate him as a colorless monster. From here, we would have to fight off against the hallucinations and power up the green hand here full of electricity, where when fully powered, we
what the fuck are you doing?
Unleashed it onto Catnap, catching his entire body on fire and burning him alive, just like what happened when he was a child, once again putting him near death. From here, the prototype would again reveal himself, and Catnap would get into his prayer pose, seemingly begging 1006 for help in the same way he helped him as a child. But the prototype no longer saw him as useful, so like Mommy Longlegs, he killed him and took his body away again for his own use. Thankfully, after this, we were finally able to repower the gas production zone and reroute the gas down into the prison. Poppy and Kissy would then return to go on the lift down with us to complete whatever her mysterious mission was, before at the perfect time while going down, Kissy would be attacked by an unknown monster. When reaching the bottom of the lift, Poppy tells us that she supposedly has friends down here, and tasks us with finding them while she goes up to save Kissy from whatever was attacking her. From here, we keep exploring around and eventually open up a door to reveal thousands upon thousands of dead toys in a massive graveyard, which when walking through brought us to the train station that led into the Playtime prison. And when
remake the code to where the attack is a spin that won't end unless our bot is put against a wall, at which point it will reposition towards the enemy and push until off said wall at a safe distance to where now it would continue said attack, said spin attack. I don't want it side spinning. I want you to change the attack to just spinning in one direction. Okay. Now that was extremely detailed, and we're going to see if it worked. An attack, a bot that is aware of its surroundings, where if it's pushed up against a wall, it will then push off and get to the enemy, reposition, and then start its spinning attack again. That is what we are doing here, guys. That is what we have come to do.
Entering said train, we are met with a very interesting face, or should I say eye. The eye of Harley Sawyer, who had connected to the Playtime Co. security system through the computer and had been watching our journey through the factory this entire time leading up to now. He would tease and threaten us a bit here before dropping us into the prison.
Santa gets cookies, we get donuts.
Upon exploring the prison a bit, we would quickly come across the hungry rabid creatures that lived down in the Playtime Co. depths, the Nightmare Critters, who we fight off and avoid before making it to a tempting chamber, where Harley once again appears and teases to us that he had reunited with an old friend, Yarnaby, who he had let loose on us for his own entertainment to watch us get hunted down. And while at first things from here seemed somewhat hopeless, while trying to escape Yarnaby's grasp, a mysterious doughy figure begins to help us out, unlocking different doors and causing distractions to attract Yarnaby, allowing for us to escape. And as we kept exploring further, eventually we accidentally fell down a chamber and came face to face with another experiment, Pianosaurus, a ferocious savage beast who at an instant turned around and started charging towards us. However, thankfully, at the last second, the doughy creature reaches their hands out and grabs onto Pianosaurus, slamming him around and dragging him into the darkness before eating everything but his head. As the figure emerges from the darkness, he reveals himself as Doughy the Doughman, the safe haven leader. Doughy introduces himself and guides us towards a safe haven where Poppy said her friends would be. While moving towards the area though, suddenly Kissy, who miraculously survived her attack earlier, dragged us into a crevice where her and Poppy were hiding as the prototype was hunting them down, moving across, suggesting this was the being that attacked her. And from there, they gunned it straight into safe haven and closed it just in time. They were all safe, and Poppy, the one that the members had been waiting for years, was back in the Haven. Here, she finally explains to us her full plan. She knew about the prototype hiding the orphans deep below in the labs, and it was going to be our job to go and save them. While the reason she guided the red smoke down into the prison was because she also knew that the red smoke, like we mentioned earlier, was flammable and explosive. So her plan was to bring all of the orphans out of the factory and explode the entire place, killing the prototype and all of the bad experiments inside of it. From here, Kissy was severely injured from her attack, so they both stayed back and tended to her wounds, while Dodie brought us to the room with the generator and alerted to us that the generator was broken and desperately needed new parts, or else it would stop working and the safe haven would be unprotected. They had the parts already, but the only problem is, to open the generator, the Omni Hand was needed, with the only Omni Hand known to still exist being in possession of Harley Sawyer. Meaning, before doing anything, we needed to get that hand and save the children in Safe Haven. From here, we kept exploring around, and after having another run-in with Yarnaby where we had ran from him and got him stuck on a hook, killing Harley's pets, we continued onward into the secondary lab, where Harley's various body parts were being stored. Going around the lab, we discovered all of his body parts and destroyed them. However, the last part, his brain, was going to be the hardest as it was heavily guarded. For instance, one of Harley's security measures was keeping some nightmare critters of his own as pets to protect him. And after making it past this test, Harley had trapped us into a room, giving us a super interesting dilemma, forcing us, the employee who only re-entered the factory to try and cleanse the guilt we felt for creating the experiments, to make a very important decision. Either stay trapped in the room alone and die, ending our mission, or be forced to kill an innocent experiment turned toy to keep progression. Sawyer was painted as the bad guy for killing innocent children to complete his mission, but would we
David, the movie.
I will not be afraid. Are you ready for a
Okay, I'm
great
done. That's good enough.
adventure?
With that stupid ass AI ass fucking movie, I'm getting the fuck off.